Good evening and welcome to the January 9th, 2018 San Bruno City Council meeting. And first and foremost, on behalf of the City Council, Happy New Year, everyone. Glad to see you all here. I'm going to assume you're all here for the new City Council that's before you, but probably it's for some of the things on the agenda, but we're glad to have you here. If we can go ahead and have roll call, Vicki.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
Councilmember Salazar.
Here.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Here.
Mayor Medina.
Here. Tonight I've asked our explorers to be here. Sergeant Milley, I've asked him to come forward and please lead us in the first Pledge of Allegiance of the new year for the San Bruno City Council in this community. Please rise.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Sergeant. I think we have a couple words. What I would ask is if we could go ahead and just give a little bit about our Explorer program. These are young people in our high school and above that volunteer their time to this community. I'd like to hear now a little bit about what your program is.
The San Bruno Police Explorer program is designed to give youth of our community a chance to experience law enforcement firsthand. This program is nationally known as Exploring and is part of the co-ed division of the Boy Scouts of America. The purpose of the Explorer program is to increase community relations between the youth of San Bruno and the San Bruno Police Department. The program is also striving to provide us with direction and guidance in preparation to accepting the responsibilities of becoming an adult. Our current post 559, is comprised of 16 individuals ranging in age from 14 to 21 years old. We meet every other week at the San Bruno Police Department for education regarding penal codes and practice scenarios, in addition to schedule planning and guidance. We are instrumental in assisting the San Bruno Posy Parade and Community Day in the Park, as well as the annual Police Recognition Day held at the Shops at Tan Fran. Among other events in our city and throughout our county, we recently participated in Adopt a Unit. This endeavor included fundraising and the box of care packages to send our military who had been deployed into Africa. It is a pleasure to be part of this Explorer post, and we are always looking for interested and dedicated individuals willing to volunteer for our program. Thank you.
And Officer Rogi, would you be so kind as to make the introductions to these fine group of people that are behind you?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you. As you've met Sergeant Zidon Milley, we have Tyler Lau, we have Cheyenne Singh. We had Cameron as her brother as an explorer years ago, who's back from Chico on our winter break. We have Victoria Lopez, and we have Rania Milley.
Thank you. On behalf of the, go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to thank you for recognizing them today, and not only them, but their parents who oftentimes bring the kids to our events. And just with these five, I did kind of the hours on the way over, and just with these five individuals, they put in over 178 hours in the last 7 months of volunteer hours.
This is a program that at one point it was down to 3 explorers. This is a program that was at 17, but at 21, you have to leave the program, and so is at 16. But it's a testament to the young people of this community, their volunteerism, and also to the officers that have seen the success from Darrell to today. And I want to thank all of you for being here, and thank you for being a part of the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and if you have homework, you can go ahead and do it. If not, don't worry. Tell them you have the night off.
Thank you.
Under announcements, if we have some items on the agenda, if we have members of the audience that wish to speak on a particular item, if you'd please go over to our great deputy, Vicki Hache. She has speaker cards in the corner by the podium, and if you would hand them to her. This time we will be doing it to where the speaker cards will be read by Vicki, and so she'll read a few out so that we can kind of get the line going and everybody can get heard and have their opportunity. So again, Vicki is right there, and the speaker cards are available. Presentations. We have something very unique and that is an acknowledgement of someone's great years of service to this city as a city employee. Bob Magny, as I found out, and I've known him for some years as we used to work at Parks and Recreation together, liked working with his hands, plants, and parks. Following graduation from high school, they gave me the year, so I'm going to say it. In 1975, he decided to try some culture over programming at San Francisco City College. But on December 16, 1977, Bob started his career with the Park Maintenance Division with the City of San Bruno. Over the next 40 years, Bob worked in different positions within the Park Maintenance Divisions, ultimately assuming responsibility as a lead maintenance worker. And if you've seen him around town, it is because the man takes care of the lawns, the fields, and so when you walk to those parks and you see them, you say, wow, they're maintained well. It's Bob Magny who's done just that. While playing volleyball, which we discussed this just today at lunch, while playing volleyball at the Veterans Memorial Recreation Center in a program he developed and ran for 16 years, where Carol Bonner also participated and played, Bob met his wife, Michelle. They have two wonderful children, Adam and Lucas, who are both currently in college, but here with us tonight. The family has always been on top of Bob's priority list, whether in supporting his children in school or the extra activities, helping a family member in need, or just simply making time to be with his family. Bob is always there for them. Bob, I can tell you, is one of the most easiest going persons with the most positive attitude and the ability that he gets along with everyone. There is all the years that I work with him, there is nobody that could say or be mad at Bob Magny. He just has the ability, he has the smile, he has the charisma. And he has given this city and this community over 40 years and has seen many changes, but what does not change is the dedication and the love that he has for the community he calls home, and that he has given to over 40 years of his life to this community, its residents. And on behalf of the San Bruno City Council, I want to congratulate you, thank you, and if you meet me at the podium, I'd like to acknowledge you with your 40 years of loyal and dedicated service, plaque and pen.
Actually talk now?
You can do it.
Oh, geez. I don't know what to say. All I can remember is back in '77, this movie came out called Star Wars. So you might say the Force has been with me for the last 40 years. I'm still here. It's been a pleasure to serve the San Bruno community. I'm honored. I've met a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of family. When I think of San Bruno, I think of family, friends, and eventually end up talking about food. The restaurants around here and everything. So it's been my pleasure to meet everybody in the community. And the next time you see somebody on a big red mower with a funny hat and glasses and headset, just wave to me, because when you wave to me, I smile, and hopefully you'll smile back. So it just makes the day a little bit better. So thank you very much for everything.
Thank you very much, Bob, Michelle, guys, for being here. You should be proud of your father. He's a great asset to this town. Review of agenda. I'd like to go ahead with council's approval and move item 11, which is receive annual report from the Planning Commission, to after our public hearing. Is there any other review of the agenda? Any other changes that need to be made? If not, let's move down to approval of minutes. We had the special and regular city council meetings of November 28th and the special meeting of December the 12th, back in 2017. Is there any corrections or changes to those minutes? If not, they'll go ahead and stand as approved.
Consent calendar. All items are considered routine or implement an earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested.
To the council, are there any items that you want to have pulled from consent this evening?
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
A motion and a second to approve consent. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Now let's move on to item 8. Vicki?
Public hearing. Hold public hearing and uphold the Planning Commission's decision denying a whale mouth facade at an existing car wash located at 1199 El Camino Real.
Going to go ahead and ask staff to begin, and do we want to start with the city attorney as far as outlining how this appeal will occur this evening?
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, and members of the public. This is an appeal of a Planning Commission decision, and so it's subject to slightly more rigid rules so that way we make sure that everybody who's in the audience that would like to speak has an opportunity to do that. The appellant has an opportunity to speak and then also to make a closing statement. So here's the order of events, just so everybody knows. So the first thing that will happen is that staff, David Woltering, the Community Development Director, will present the staff report. Council members at that time may direct questions to Mr. Woltering about the report for a response. Thereafter, the public hearing will be opened, and that's the time when the appellant and or his representative will have 10 minutes to make a presentation. After that, members of the public may also wish to comment, and if you're one of those people, it's not required, but it would be very helpful if you fill out a speaker form so that way we know how many speakers there are, because depending on the number of speakers, the mayor has the discretion to either limit or lengthen the amount of time that each speaker has. So normally it's 3 minutes, but if there are a lot of speakers, the mayor may decide to limit it to 1 or 2 minutes. So if you could fill out a speaker form just with your name and other information if you'd like. Again, not required, but it would be very helpful. So those individuals can come up and comment. After that, the appellant and or his representatives will have 5 minutes to make a closing statement and make any other closing comments. Then at that point, the public hearing will be closed. The council members, it'll be returned to them. They may direct questions to staff if they have any questions for a response. Council members will then discuss the information and evidence that they've heard, information that's been presented, and then take action on the appeal by motion. So somebody would make a motion to either uphold the appeal or to deny the appeal or to do something different. So then what will happen is staff will then come back at a subsequent meeting with a formal resolution for the City Council's adoption that incorporates all of the findings of fact and issues on which the City Council based its decision. So that'll come back at the next meeting. That's not an opportunity to reopen the hearing. All the testimony will be closed. It's just an opportunity for the City Council to memorialize the decision that they will have made this evening. So that's a short summary, and if there aren't any questions, we can turn it over to David Woltering, the Community Development Director, for his staff report.
Any questions from council on the appeal process? How many persons does he want to speak on this topic? Just raise your hand if you could, please. It seems that everybody with the 3 minutes is fine. If council's good with that. Mr. Woltering, if you go ahead with the staff report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. This agenda item is the applicant's appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of a project proposing to construct a whale's mouth facade attached to the exit of an existing car wash located at 1199 El Camino Real. To date, staff has received 2 pieces of correspondence regarding this agenda item that have been distributed to the City Council members. The first one is from the applicant's attorney, Matthew Bissick, in which the attorney describes his rationale for supporting this appeal request. The second piece of correspondence is anonymous from a local resident here for 60 years, and in this piece of correspondence that you have a copy of, the individual indicates opposition to the application due to its size and appearance. The subject property is located on the southwest corner of El Camino Real and Sneath Lane, a heavily used gateway intersection with nearby iconic San Bruno landmarks, including the Golden Gate National Cemetery on the northwest corner, Town Center Plaza and Chase Bank on the northeast corner, and the shops at Tanforan Shopping Mall at the southeast corner. Approximately 1/8 of a mile to the south from the subject site, on the same side of El Camino Real, is the Crossing mixed-use development that includes a modern complex of apartments, senior housing, and commercial establishments. Among the commercial establishments are a dental office, financial services, and the popular Jack's restaurant. The Crossing development also contains the site of a future planned hotel, which will be within walking distance to Tanforan and its various amenities, including movie theaters and eating establishments. The Crossing development is reflective of the design vision for this area as described in the Navy Site and Environ's specific plan. This specific plan was adopted in 2001 by the City of San Bruno after several years of public outreach and plan development to define development standards and design guidelines for this area of our community. The subject service station site is within the Navy Site and Environ's specific plan area. This subject site, the service station site, is 22,373 square feet in area, about a half an acre, developed with a self-service gas station, a car wash, and a convenience store. The applicant is proposing to add a whale mouth facade as an extension to the exit of the existing car wash on this site. The whale mouth facade would add 249 square feet of lot coverage, and it would add an additional 3 feet to the car wash in terms of its height, up to 18 feet. The applicant has reduced the proposed height by 2 feet since the Planning Commission meeting. The car wash exit would be lengthened by the whale mouth by 19 feet, leaving about 3 feet 10 inches between the car wash and the roof of the pump station. Materials used for the whale mouth include an EPS fiberglass base with 3 coats of paint. The finish would be gray-blue for the whale skin, white cream for the teeth, and pink for the tongue. The fiberglass exterior would be reinforced by an interior 3-inch thick metal frame. The applicant is not proposing any additional changes to the site. On May 5th of 2016, the applicant, Mr. Bobak Bakhtiari, submitted an application for an architectural review permit proposing to construct the whale mouth facade addition attached to the exit of the existing car wash. A proposed project of this type requires review by the city's Architectural Review Committee and approval of an architectural review permit pursuant to Section 12.108.001 of the San Bruno Municipal Code. This provision of the San Bruno Code requires review and approval of a permit by the Architectural Review Committee for exterior changes to buildings that are visible from a public right-of-way. This requirement does not apply to single or two-family dwellings. It does apply, however, to commercial structures, as is the circumstance with this application. There are a number of findings that the Architectural Review Committee would need to make in order to approve an architectural review permit for this application. These findings include that the proposed development would be in keeping with the neighborhood and not detrimental to the orderly and harmonious development of the city, and would not impair the desirability of investment or occupation in the neighborhood, and that the proposed development is consistent with the provisions of the city's general plan. At a public hearing in December of 2016, the Architectural Review Committee reviewed the project. The committee continued the hearing to a future date and asked staff for more information regarding the proposed project and site conditions. On August 10th, 2017, the committee held a second hearing and after receiving additional information from staff and the applicant, and receiving public testimony, the members voted to deny the proposed whale mouth addition based on the following findings. First finding, the proposed addition is inconsistent with the Navy Site and Environment Specific Plan, which states that materials along storefronts should be carefully selected to be of a high quality and appropriate to the pedestrian realm. Materials and colors should be pleasant to view and touch and offer color variation, such as masonry, stucco, or precast concrete. The crossing development is within the Navy Site Specific Plan area, which includes the commercial development, includes commercial development such as Jack's Restaurant and other businesses. The crossing includes the Acapella Apartments, formerly Avalon, and senior housing, which are both marked by high-quality design and materials, metal statues, stone fountains, etc., and a consistent theme and aesthetic throughout. Second finding, the proposed addition is inconsistent with the San Bruno General Plan, which promotes development of El Camino Real as a boulevard with a series of districts and distinctive uses weaved together with a unified streetscape, sidewalk improvements, and pedestrian amenities, and furthermore encourages high-quality building designs. The proposed development would be out of character with the theme and aesthetics of the crossing development, which contains a unified streetscape, sidewalk improvements, and pedestrian amenities, along with high-quality design, and provides a distinct district along El Camino Real. In contrast, the proposed project is a bold caricature that would be constructed of a material that is not found in the immediate neighborhood, which is defined by more classical architectural forms, colors, materials, and textures. The very objective of the project is to draw attention to this particular site, which is inconsistent with the city's vision of a unified district at this location. On August 21st, 2017, the applicant filed a request to appeal the Architecture Review Committee's decision to the Planning Commission per Section 12.120.050 of the San Bruno Municipal Code. On November 21st, 2017, the Planning Commission held a duly noticed public hearing on the applicant's appeal. After considering the applicant's presentation and comments from the public, the Planning Commission voted to deny the appeal of the Architecture Review Committee's decision and agreed with the Architecture Review Committee's findings, as stated above, and the project's appearance in form, color, and material being out of character with development within the vicinity. The Commission did not find the design image of the whale mouth consistent with or in support of the vision of either the general plan or the Navy Site and Environment Specific Plan for the district as exemplified by nearby projects. On November 28, 2017, the applicant submitted an appeal to the city of the Planning Commission's decision. In his statement, the appellant argues that the denial of his project for the reason that the design is inconsistent with the surroundings is vague, subjective, and unjust. He disputes whether the car wash exit would be considered a part of the streetscape because it is located in the back corner of the site and strengthens the aquatic theme on the property. Staff has considered the appellant's statements in support of the appeal and finds that the addition of the 249 square foot, 18 foot tall whale mouth feature would be inconsistent with the San Bruno General Plan and the Navy Site and Environment Specific Plan as determined previously by the Architecture Review Committee and the Planning Commission, warranting denial of this request. Due to its size and location, the whale mouth would be highly visible by vehicles and pedestrians using the main thoroughfares of Sneath Lane and El Camino Real in all directions. For example, those traveling north and south on El Camino Real would see the whale mouth while waiting for the stoplight at the intersection, as would pedestrians walking along El Camino Real to frequent shopping centers nearby. As evidenced by the photographs attached to the Planning Commission staff report and the additional photos taken last week, the site currently contains a disparate combination of landscaping and other features such as rocks and shrubs and plants in pottery containers placed about the site, signs, statues, displays of various types, and various aquatic themes, such as a dolphin fountain and a large mural. The addition of an 18-foot-high whale mouth facing toward the Golden Gate Cemetery would exacerbate the inconsistent features of the site. None of these themes are featured at any other nearby location. The cemetery contains manicured expanses of green lawn, while the crossing and the shopping malls use integrated landscape and hardscape designs devoid of extraneous features. In addition, the quality of materials proposed for the whale mouth, which consists of fiberglass, is inconsistent with a higher quality integrated pedestrian realm created at the nearby developments, where masonry, stucco, and concrete are used. For these reasons and the reasons outlined in the Planning Commission staff report and resolution, staff recommends denial of the appeal. There is no direct fiscal impact to the city for either the approval or denial of this appeal. Staff is recommending that the City Council deny the appeal by motion and direct staff to prepare a resolution that supports the City Council's action this evening. This resolution would be brought back to the City Council on the consent calendar for adoption at the next City Council meeting. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions of staff regarding the report that we just heard from council at this time? No. Okay, if not, why don't we go ahead and we're going to move into the public hearing. All comments will be made at the podium, and so that they're on the record, so that's where comments shall be made from. And I'm going to go ahead and open it at this time to the appellant or his or her representative. It has 10 minutes for your comments and or presentation, please. You gotta fight for your right to whale mouth. Sorry, I just felt like I needed to have a little intro there. Thank you. Sorry, it's very uncommon. Hello, Honorable Mayor Medina and City Council. Thanks for having me tonight. Never in my life did I think I'd be fighting for a whale mouth. I'm Bobak Cyrus Bakhtiari. I'm the owner at Tan Franchel. I'm also a TV and stage actor. I'm also a court-appointed special advocate in LA County for a few child dependents of LA County. This has been a very baffling and elaborate process for me. I really feel like I haven't been given a fair shake here for this permit. And now I'm getting calls from newspapers. I had the SF Chronicle call me 2 hours ago. This is clearly getting out of hand. I'm probably going to be on NPR next week. I don't know if that's going to happen. But anyhow, all I want to do is address the concerns that the city had originally and have a dialogue with the city about the whale mouth facade. And that's actually where we were headed in the first meeting. There were very specific concerns that came up, and there was a continuance issued, and I felt like the city was moving towards appropriating the whale mouth. But unfortunately, the second meeting, it was totally new commissioners. I didn't have that many advocates, and the original concerns that I'd addressed seemed to be completely irrelevant suddenly, and I was outright denied, and there was some, verbiage generated that I felt was abstract and, hard for me to understand, not being in planning. I'm into this for tens of thousands of dollars. It's been 2 years. I'm really willing to be flexible here. I'm asking the City Council to take a fresh look at my situation regarding this permit in the background of the gas station. Just a few words about the site. It's been a family operation since 1998. My father retired in November of 2015, at which point I took over the site. He had an uncommonly liberal approach to getting permits. He generally didn't apply for them. Hence the rightful gazes and not so much cooperation, enthusiasm about my ideas with the Planning Commission. anyhow, the goals with this art attachment are twofold. I wanted to bring an element of playful wonder to the site, and to an otherwise kind of disparate and somewhat drab intersection, and secondly, to enhance and target fundraising efforts and include Sea Life Conservancy. Currently, we give 5% monthly of our sales to local and global humanitarian projects, and my goal is to increase that to 20% by 2020. We started at 3, we're at 5, and I really see this as a sustainable vision, and I felt that an adorable whale mouth could help contribute to this incentive. At this point, I'd love to present a brief video about the proposal, then continue talking a tiny bit more about the aesthetics. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Smith. Thank you. Oh, do you think we could restart it? And sir, I'm monitoring the clock, so don't worry, this time is not being taken off your 10 minutes.
Oh, thank you. I was
Absolutely.
about to have a panic attack.
Years. The current proposal is of a sperm whale mouth, a permanent art attachment that would be consistent with the aquatic theme of the site. Various locations on site convey an aquatic natured theme, including the drive leading up to the car wash. In addition, the whale mouth would in no way obstruct or alter existing traffic patterns. Here's a shot of the exit of the wash. Those pumps in the lane of the car wash exit are not utilized on the side facing the car wash lane. Here's a view from inside a car as it exits the wash. It's significant to note that the height of the whale mouth would be consistent with the clearance of the car wash. It's also worth noting that cars exit the wash very slowly in order to maximize on the 60 seconds allotted for the blow drying of their car. Let's take a look at our neighborhood. Directly across the way on Sneath Lane is the Golden Gate National Cemetery, with 161.5 acres of land containing 145,000 graves. Across the way on El Camino is the Tanforan Mall, containing 150 vendors, including a Hooters. Directly adjacent west borders a sporadically active 23rd Marine Forces Reserve, aka United States Marine Corps Reserve, with regularly little to no activity visible on site. It is my understanding that the permit for this whale mouth was denied for 2 reasons. 1, the proposed addition is inconsistent with a Navy site-specific plan which states, quote, materials along storefront should be carefully selected to be of a high quality and appropriate to the pedestrian realm. Materials and colors should be pleasant to view and touch and offer color variations such as masonry, stucco, or precast concrete, unquote. Regarding the consistency with a Navy site-specific plan, the finding that the proposed development would not be appropriate to the pedestrian realm is not justified, and this finding is not consistent with the intent of this policy in this specific plan. This specific plan seeks to encourage a pedestrian-friendly streetscape with varied building facades and high-quality materials. The proposed whale facade does not face the street, as you can see in these 3D renderings. It's located in a gas station, set back from the street and behind the pumps. The facade of this car wash will not have an adverse effect on the pedestrian environment. If anything, the facade would provide a pleasant, welcome, interesting artistic feature in the pedestrian realm, would offer variation from the surrounding environment, and would further the goals of improving the pedestrian environment in the district. The other cited reason for denial was that the proposed addition was inconsistent with the San Bruno General Plan, which promotes development of El Camino Real as a boulevard with a series of districts with distinctive uses woven together with unified streetscapes, sidewalk improvements, and pedestrian amenities, and furthermore encourages high-quality building designs. Regarding the consistency with the San Bruno general plan, the proposed project would have no effect on the uses, which should be woven together with unified streetscapes, sidewalk improvements, and pedestrian amenities. The project would not change the existing land use, which is an approved gas station and car wash. Further, the project would have no impact to the unified streetscape, sidewalk, or pedestrian amenities. The proposed project would be visible across the existing pumps from the sidewalk and street, but would not face the street or become part of the street wall. The proposed whale facade would add interest and character to the area, which is consistent to the goals of the general plan. It is also worth noting that the specific plan allows car washes as allowed uses within this designated ECR frontage land use designation. As gas stations and car washes are an allowed use, the finding that a visual alteration of the car wash exit would have an adverse impact on the pedestrian realm neither furthers nor implements the intent of the specific plan. Though this appears to be an original idea, the owner of Tanforan Shell quickly discovered that he was not the only one thinking of whales and car washes. In fact, aquatic theme washes date back to the early 1940s, as we can see here. So the idea is not so out there as originally speculated in the first meeting with the Planning Commission. With 40 years of experience of building custom facades, Impersonature would be collaborating with a local Props 2C team to build this whale mouth. Here's a few shots of their outdoor permanent installs, including a whale mouth that they did in 2009 in the Midwest, which is still up today. And here's some shots of Props 2C's work. The experience would not only be an aesthetically joyful incident for wash consumers' lives, but will serve to permanently fundraise for Sea Life Conservancy, which is a notably awesome thing to do for many reasons. This art attachment would provide a pleasant buffer to the industrial air of the military zone next door and provide a contrast to the large cemetery across the street. And once again, to clarify the limited visibility of the proposed whale mouth from the intersection, here are a few shots from the intersection and other relevant renderings.
Oh, I thought I took that out. Sorry. I believe the next 5 minutes will be just a static image of the whale mouth superimposed. I just want to add a couple more things. I certainly want this to be a tasteful addition to the site. I'm flexible and remain willing to work with the city on shaping this art project so that it can be approved. For instance, I know there were concerns about it being loud and really visible. I'm open to a color palette that doesn't attract the eye. I mean, if they think like, what about a squirrel's mouth? I'd be open to that. So I'm completely flexible in that respect. I do want to say a few things about landscaping at the site since it continues to be brought up in staff reports. If we pulled up photos of the site prior to my takeover, you would have seen that I think everyone, the Planning Commission would agree that it's had a radical transformation from what appeared to be a signage avalanche in Tijuana to a much cleaner aesthetic. In the last year, I've worked proactively with the city and the Parks and Rec staff to implement a city-approved landscaping plan, which cost me nearly $22,000. So I was surprised at a lot of the recent reports about the inconsistency of the landscaping when it was comprehensively a collaboration with the city. I actually wanted a desert theme with cacti, and the city made me remove all sand and cacti because cacti is not an approved drought-tolerant plant in San Bruno, which I find rather paradoxical. So anyhow, most importantly, before last year, I believe the site was out of landscaping compliance for well over 15 years. And like I said, I'm certainly willing to continue making changes to the site generally to better fit with the aesthetic vision in the specific plan and general plan. I ask that the council consider approving the project with conditions rather than deny it outright or continue the hearing and direct me to work with staff on specific issues and then bring it back to them to consider a revised project that addresses those issues. I believe this art attachment at the back of a station won't adversely impact or compromise the goals of the specific plan. I think I forget if I get to have questions directed at me, or do I just sit down?
No, at this time, we're going to now let the public,
Great.
After you're concluded.
Well,
sir.
thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, what we're going to do at this time is we're going to go ahead and have the public go to the podium. Vicki is going to read your name. You'll have 3 minutes. What I am going to ask so that everybody feels welcome and feels at ease. Sometimes we all get the emotions going and we're clapping or we have comments and under our breaths or not. So what I'm going to ask is we allow the speaker to speak and be heard completely, and we refrain from applause or other commentary during that to give the respect to each speaker they deserve. So, Vicki, if you'd start calling.
Robert Riegel.
Robert Riegel, 7th Avenue. I'm in favor of the mouth. I think it's far enough back. It's basically hid in the corner. You can maybe see it a little bit if you really look for it as you're driving by. I don't think it's that much of a distraction. I would hope that, as the applicant said, maybe there's a way to continue his application and see if he can work a little bit more with the city to see if there's some of the questions that might be resolved. As a side note a little bit, my concern at that intersection is the bright electronic sign that you see as you drive south on El Camino, but I know that's not part of tonight's discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, please, let's refrain. Next speaker, please, Vicki.
Excuse me, Plymouth Ansbergs.
Hello. My name is Plymouth Ansbergs. I live on 2nd Avenue. I've only lived in San Bruno for a few months now, but I'm really hoping that to make this our home and live here for many years to come. I've really been enjoying my time in the city. One of the things I really love about it, specifically thinking of like the San Mateo Ave area, is that it's not uniform. I kept hearing like the person over here reading the report from the Planning Commission saying uniform, consistent, and all I could hear was boring, dull, repetitive. I'm really in favor of something like this addition to the car wash. I feel like it'll add character, it'll be whimsical, it'll be a piece of like roadside Americana that could get written up in something like Atlas Obscura. I think it'll really bring positive attention to the city. I love the aquatic theme at that car wash, at that gas station. I actually stopped there for gas preferentially because I find it whimsical and amusing, and I feel like this could only make that situation better. So I really hope that, I noticed when I was reading the agenda that the agenda item was listed as hold public hearing and uphold Planning Commission's decision denying the whale mouth. So it kind of sounded to me like this was already a foregone conclusion and we were just having this road public hearing, kind of, okay, we got to let people talk. We've already got the answer. I really hope you'll reconsider and actually consider the public opinion. I think that it could be really positive. Thank you.
Please not applaud. I've asked. Please. Next speaker, please.
Oros Harmon.
As Plymouth said, we bought on 2nd Ave just in the last year, and planning to never move again. Possibly use the in-law unit in back to move in family in the future as my parents get more elderly, or if we end up with my young niece. I think she would really enjoy something like this. I know when I was a little kid, the car wash was exciting. And so I sort of see this as something that could be, fun. I don't think that visually it seems like it's that big a deal. It's not directly adjacent to the cemetery. I do understand the city's desire to regulate that space for people that are coming to the cemetery to visit dead relatives, but it does not look to me like it's that offensive. And I think that the idea that this discourages investment, if you look at people my age and younger, people like public art. I mean, people like the hearts in San Francisco that have weird designs on them. People like there was displays of Burning Man art that was brought into the San Francisco streets. And so I think the younger generation of people who are buying homes and investing in our communities do enjoy something a little stranger, a little more eccentric, and a little more whimsical. And so I do hope the city will reconsider this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Reina.
Raina, is it for the other item? So it's not for this one?
Excuse me,
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry, you're right.
I know which one. I'll
The
keep
next
tabs on
one
you.
is Mary Lou Johnson.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Thank you for having this opportunity. Well, first I want to comment that I have lived in San Bruno for 40 years. My business has been in San Bruno for 67 years. And I love Whimsical. All of you know that I own preschools and educational programs. I love fun. I love enjoyment. And there's no doubt that many of the comments that were said to icons and Road America and all of those are great and fun things. And we can remember that truly at Playland at the Beach and 19th Avenue with the Wiener the hot dog and the Laughing Lady. And there's just many places that you go back and just remember those things. And I certainly would not want to not encourage creativity. But I have to speak to safety, and that's my key thing. And I'm not opposed to the creativity of the project. I think that we all know and we saw by the video that El Camino and Sneath Lane is a huge and very large intersection. And I think that's the key to keep also as you're making your decision to keep in mind. Many of you know the tragic accident that happened several years ago, fatal accident. It's hard to cross there. People get really nervous about crossing there. And so it really is a place of safety that's extremely important to me. And I know that that icons and these types of Road America fun things make you want to stop to look. You can't hardly wait to stop at a stop sign and see what these look like. Turning right from El Camino, from the north to El Camino, it's hard enough because if you're not really careful, you go over that bump and you really clunk your tires. So any distractions is a really key thing here. And that's really I want to address. That if it's going to create a place to distract people, I think we've got to consciously take a look at that. And I want to really convey that I'm not opposed to the project. I'm opposed to the safety of it, that it might create. And if that can be addressed in a particular way, I think by having the opportunity to look at this differently, having some time, maybe it's not denial, but it's certainly important to take a look at this. I don't know that a squirrel or a whale would be any different, but I think that anything that draws attention to it is at that particular intersection, it'd be unconscionable to think that it could not be without a distraction. So thank you for hearing my comments.
Thank you. Next speaker, Vicki. That's it. Were there any other speakers that didn't put in cards that had wanted to speak on this topic? Well, please. Is there anybody else in the audience that also wanted to speak? Because I'd like you to go to the podium at this time, because then we're going to be closing public hearing, and then you'll be precluded from speaking on this item.
Louis Bravos from Hamilton Avenue, Mayor and City Council. I think this individual needs the freedom to make this item on his property. When the rules mention quality materials, they just had to write that in to prevent people from putting like tarps and things like that. So it's just tarps versus any kind of permanent material, so the whale qualifies as high quality in that sense. And I just agree with the whale, and he should be allowed to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Good evening, council members. My name is Will Fort. I live actually in Felton, California, off of 17. I grew up on the peninsula. I went to high school in San Mateo. I'm very familiar with the area. And I wanted to speak in support for the project. I recognize the importance of consistency with the city's specific plan, and I understand the importance of encouraging the transit-oriented development and pedestrian-friendly streetscape and mixed use in this area. This is a gas station. It's by definition an auto-oriented use, and has been when the specific plan was approved. It will continue to be for the foreseeable future. And I don't think that that is a reason for denying this project. I would encourage you to think of what this could bring. Actually, I think that when people go through this area, they're they're on their way somewhere. They pull into a gas station. They might be late, and they will not be expecting necessarily to see an art piece like this whale facade. And because they will experience it in that moment, it will make people smile and enjoy their surroundings. And that's a really unique thing to provide for people. So I would encourage you to think of it that way. I would encourage you to work with the applicant, and if there are safety concerns or architectural visual concerns, work with the applicant and come together and find something that works for the community. Thanks.
Okay, seeing nobody else from the audience, at this time we're going to turn it back over to the applicant for any closing or additional comments. You're going to have 5 minutes. If you want to go to the podium, please.
Hello again. I got a timer here. I didn't notice that. So I want to say that the safety concern that was mentioned, I completely honor that. In fact, I agree it's a huge intersection, and there's a lot going on at that station. At the same time, I did research that fatal accident, and it was actually an extremely drunk driver that hit a pedestrian, and I believe it was more than 7 years ago. I could not find any other fatal accident like in the last 40 years at that intersection. At the same time, I do feel if given the opportunity to continue this, that is something that I fully intend on trying to understand how to mitigate potential safety concerns there. I also do have to say that before I took over the site, there was an unpermitted shed where there was a man selling T-shirts, and it was very loud. There was it was just an extremely noticeable thing happening on site, pretty elaborate, and it was very distracting. In fact, within a year of taking over, the shed was removed and the man stopped selling T-shirts. But I just want to say that was up for 2 years and there was never any issues. And so at that intersection in the history of this site, we haven't had any major fatalities. I also do want to say that I'd like to ask the council to delve deep into the original vitality of childlike wonder within, and consider this for the kids in the community, and give me an opportunity to sort of hash out the specific concerns and come up with a design that can be appropriated for the community with the Planning Commission. I'm not encouraging the council to override the Planning Commission, but rather to continue this or approve it with conditions rather than deny it outright. I guess I have 2 minutes. Maybe we can all meditate together. Just kidding. Well, thanks so much for giving me this opportunity. It's been a long process. I've learned a lot, and I sincerely hope that that I have an opportunity to continue this project. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. Now, the appellant has the right to be heard last, and that's out of courtesy and respect to you. So with that, we're going to go ahead and can I have a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. So, council, questions and for staff and responses that we have after our hearing? Please, Mr. Salazar.
I'd like to start with a question to the city attorney regarding our process. And so maybe you could clarify my understanding in that our job here tonight is to evaluate the conditions around the denial and see if we believe that they are valid. And it really shouldn't be a reflection of our own personal opinion on what this project is, but rather verifying that the original finding was in fact valid. Right.
So let me just take a minute and explain that. This is actually what's referred to in the law as a de novo hearing, and what that means is that you are required to hear the evidence that is presented by the appellant and by the staff and by members of the public as if there were no planning commission or architectural review decision. Having said that, the findings of the architectural review committee and of the planning commission are findings that you may either wish to agree with or disagree with in your independent discretion. So your job tonight is to independently evaluate the facts that are presented to you in the staff report, by the appellant, by the members of the public, and come to your own conclusion about that, and not simply to weigh in on whether the planning commission made the correct decision or not.
Or whether staff's recommendation is appropriate.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't really understand what you mean by that.
Well, I agree with what one of the speakers said regarding the way this was agendized, and it says that we're having a public hearing and then upholding the Planning Commission's decision. So it's basically based on there were two findings in the staff's report that the Planning Commission upheld. And so this is basically saying we're going to also uphold those findings. So rather than issue our own decision on whether those are valid, it makes it sound like we are just putting a rubber stamp on what the planning commission
Yes, I understand it could be misinterpreted, and I understand the appellant's concern about that. Actually, the title of the staff report is consistent with the titles of all of our other staff reports in that they reflect the staff's recommendation. So whatever the recommendation is to uphold or deny or whatever it is, all of our staff reports' titles reflect that recommendation. And that doesn't change the fact that your job tonight is to independently evaluate the evidence that you've heard that's in the staff report and that this has been shown in the videos and so on and so forth, to come to your own independent determination regardless of what the title of the staff report says.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. Keep going? Or?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to say in general, I do support the recommendations that come from our committees and our commissions. They're generally better equipped to make some of the more technical decisions, and they do generally come up with some good policies and decisions, and in general I do support them. And I don't particularly like the whalehead personally, but as I mentioned before, I don't think it's really about my opinion about whaleheads here, but rather whether the findings and the points that the applicant addressed are in fact valid reasons for turning down the project. And I don't think I completely agree with that. I do understand why we have some of these things written into our plans, and generally agree with those. But I also feel that as a city, we do need to work with our business owners to get certain things done. And if we are sticklers for the letter of the law in certain cases, we may be doing ourselves and the community a disservice. While I know that there is a vision for what the area should look like, and many of the new developments are following those visions, I don't think that looking at this specific property that would be completely appropriate to apply the same standard, because there is nothing else on this property that meets those standards. It's different color, it's different material, it's completely different. It's a gas station, it's a car wash. It already doesn't meet those standards. And looking at that whalehead within the context of that gas station, it seems less inappropriate than if we were to compare it, that whalehead sitting in the middle of the crossing somewhere. So in that case, I think I would tend to disagree that that alone would be a reason for denying it. And really what I would like to see, and since the applicant is willing, and we heard from at least one planning commissioner saying that they would be willing to rehear it, I'm wondering if we couldn't send this back and see if there isn't some kind of compromise that could be reached where some of these other issues are addressed.
Other comments or questions from council? Vice Mayor
To the
Davis.
chair. Thank you, Councilmember Salazar, for those comments, because there's part of that I agree with you as well. Although when I make a decision on new construction, I think we need to think about going forward. And my concern is here's the Shell gas station at this corner, and let's just say we decide to agree to this. What happens a block away down the street? Well, they've done it. Now, what about us? My first thought when looking at the design and the architecture, the image, et cetera, I thought amusement park, I thought Las Vegas, and I don't think that that's what the San Bruno El Camino Real is. I definitely have concerns about safety. I'm glad that was also mentioned by Commissioner Johnson, and that's a tight little area. I've been to that gas station many a times and through the car wash many a times. I think adding another 19 feet of an extension to that car wash is a bit tight. I realize you do come out of a car wash very slow, but I'm also concerned about the size. I'm definitely very concerned about the distraction of that because, as I said, amusement park. So you're driving down and there's distracted drivers. It is a very busy intersection, so there's a concern there as well. But I am in agreement with going back to the commission to say, can you change the color? Can you do something to not have it stand out so much? Let it try to fit in much more with the community, with the neighborhood. So.
Mr. Medina.
So those are some good points. I wanted to first thank you for your charity to your different causes. I went to the site this morning. I went to the site this afternoon. It's pushed back, so it's not that prominent, but it might be one of those things as you're turning, you might see at the corner of your eye, like you might do like a double take on it, which would be somewhat hazardous if you're not paying attention. People have enough problems paying attention now. There's a car wash across the street from City Hall. You know, we might get some competition there. They might want to put a squirrel or something else. I like whales. I like squirrels. I have a 5-year-old. He would like that. But what I have to keep in mind is what we already have approved in the plan. It will be out of character. I like art. I want to see more art in San Bruno. So I like to see a way that we could maybe take that whalehead. We have a water-themed city park, Commodore Park. There's this cool ship, right? So I'm thinking of taking my son to the park, playing on the ship. There's like a little mast thing, climbing thing, and off the starboard bow, is that right? Anybody, captain here? Look over and there's this whale, right? So it's more, I think it's better suited in the environment in a park, clearly. If it was at the Board Beach Walk, Santa Cruz Beach Walk, if they have Boardwalk, if it was there, it would fit better. It doesn't really fit. So I'd like to, I would challenge you to see taking that, what you're trying to do to raise the money for these causes, of maybe going to the Parks Commission and see if you could add a play feature with that whalehead. I know my son would love it. And Luis's comments about the materials, I see that point. You know, either you're gonna have masonry, stucco, concrete. Well, this is odd. an epoxy fiberglass blue whale head. You know, where would that fit? So I'm concerned about the precedent. I'm concerned about the safety, the appropriate location, and I'm hoping that we can take the positive of that and put it in the right space, which I think is better suited for a park. I struggled with this when I first heard this. I was like, oh, seriously? You know, and it's like, wow, well, this is a tough thing for me to decide on, and at this point, I'm not 100% sure of where I'm going to go with this vote. I'm hoping that there could be some kind of compromise on it, but I'm going to ask the city attorney of we're either going to uphold the denial or we're going to deny the denial. How's that work?
So the City Council has a number of choices. The City Council could uphold the Planning Commission's decision. They could overturn the Planning Commission's decision, or they could do something different, such as uphold the decision or overturn the decision with certain conditions that are imposed. Having said that, the City Council could also send the matter back to the Planning Commission if they so desired. But in that case, and in fact in any of the other cases, I would recommend that there be some specific direction given either to the Planning Commission or to the staff.
Okay.
I apologize, Barney.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was, you know, this is taking a lot more time and thought than I thought, honestly. So I will wait for two of my colleagues to add in. This wasn't predetermined, just to make everybody clear on that. We don't sit around, you know, conspiring about whale heads, okay? You know, I think it was just the choice of words in the staff report, okay? But I want to see art, right? And I guess I want to see it in a better suited place. So I'll leave it at that.
Irene.
Thank you.
Please.
No, I'm not going to add clarity, I assure you. I think that's the problem with this. And as I was reading some of the public comments from before and just listening, it's either something to attract people or it's going to be hidden. It's either something people are going to want to touch, or, oh no, it's not going to be a safety issue. If you've got a big whale there and kids are walking down the sidewalk, that's the first thing they're going to cut across and go touch it. And if you think about it, from El Camino cutting across the cars in a gas station to go touch a whale that cars are going to come out of is probably not the best idea in the world. And I appreciate whimsy. I think it's fabulous. I was the advocate for the Public Art Commission that we didn't have before, for the Parks and Rec the building of the different parks, for the public artwork that we have that we did not have before. So I understand the desire for that, but the placement of this isn't going to do either thing. It's not going to be a piece of artwork that will safely attract people because it's distracting. And I don't think it's going to add much to your gas station to attract people to come in because it's not going to be visible or visible enough. So I think that's part of why we're struggling up here. It's neither fish nor fowl to add that little piece in there. So I would suggest that we send it back to the Planning Commission without prejudice, meaning the people don't have to, I believe they don't have to resubmit a fee. And is that correct, if we do it without prejudice?
This item could be returned to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission and staff could work with the applicant with no additional fee.
Okay, so I suggest we do that, but not an 18-foot, or you took some feet off, so not a 15-foot blue whale, something else that's going to add to your business, that's going to complement the area. And I'd just like to remind all of us, Carolyn Livingood, who is no longer with us, worked for, I believe, about, more. She worked for, I believe, over 15 years to get the fencing on El Camino for the National cemetery, it used to be cyclone fence, remember that? She worked for years to get it replaced to what it is now so that it's a classy, elegant area. And I'm sorry, to have a blue whale across the street isn't exactly what I think she had in mind. So I would be in favor of sending it back without prejudice to work on some other attraction for you.
Okay, so far what I'm hearing is 3 going back to the Planning Commission to be heard to see if there can be modifications or additional conditions, uses put on it. I'm also hearing from one of my colleagues that is not 100% certain yet, but that's what I'm hearing. Absolutely.
So yeah, I would like it to be located somewhere else, I guess. And if it's a different route, it would have to go to the Parks and Rec, or maybe or it's just not the best thing there. And if you're gonna change the color, it's gonna be brown, a brown whale. I don't know. It's just not gonna really work. But if you could work something out with the Planning Commission, I think I'm definitely in favor of that. So it would be.
So I think what we're having here too is the other thing is this: if we're not going to put other conditions on it, or we're having to go back to Planning Commission, staff is asking for some clear direction so that they know some parameters. And but I don't think what is before us is to have it sent to another body. But City Manager.
Yes, so I heard Councilwoman O'Connell indicate sending it back without prejudice and the idea of no fee. This would be a new application if it were to be proposed in a different location. So the discussion before you tonight is whether you are wanting to approve, deny, or send back for some modification to this particular project in this particular location. And we would appreciate clarity, since it sounds like there is some strong interest on the council to send it back to the Planning Commission. We've heard address or consider safety issues, consider distractive size and color issues, and I think those are the primary issues. If there's other topics you want, the Planning Commission would appreciate, and staff would appreciate specific direction about what you want them to do if you decide to send it back to the commission. Right.
Anything else to add, David?
If I could, again, getting back to the key findings that the Architectural Review Committee and Planning Commission worked with, what I described, what I read to you, really came out of the code. And the code says, in terms of approving an architectural review permit, and I summarize it here, there are a number of findings in the code, but the 2 key ones are here. These findings include that the proposed development would be in keeping with the neighborhood and not detrimental to the orderly and harmonious development of the city, and would not impair the desirability of investment or occupation in the neighborhood, and that the proposed development is consistent with the provisions of the city's general plan. From those 2 findings came the 2 findings that are described in more detail in your staff report. So as the city manager indicated, if this item is sent back, you're still operating under the appeal, and we're working with the Planning Commission and staff, and then would bring back something hopefully that would meet the interests. But fundamentally, as the Planning Commission would pick this up again, they're going back to these findings. They need to make these findings in order to approve something. And as the city manager indicated, if we're looking at a new location, a new project, that is a new fee. That's a new project and a new fee. If we're working on refinement of this item at this location, then we're still operating within the appeal process.
I share some of the same, for me personally, as far as what the Planning Commission, I know went to ARC Review, I know it went to the Planning Commission, I know what's been stated, as was indicated to us as far as consistency, and and the structure and where it's located. So I, with Mr. Medina, I'm having a hard time visualizing. I have gone by. I want to assure, when you did say about the way it is phrased, it's because of the staff reports and consistent for action. I've gotten a call from a newspaper too. You've gotten much more press coverage than me. But I assured, and it was in the Daily Journal, that this is a fair and equitable. There are no biases. This council has not met. This council has not discussed this topic whatsoever. No ad hoc, no subcommittee. It's all been done right here in front of you folks, and that's what it's about. So what action do I have from the council? Again, it's about upholding it, it's about overturning it, it's about offering other conditions, or it's going back to the Planning Commission, but with some real clear direction so staff knows how to proceed. Marty?
Just wanted to clarify or ask Mr. Woltering a question. It seems very unlikely that, based on just the way things are written, that you're going to get a different outcome. That it's going to be very difficult. Of the point of something whimsical, something cute, something of a whalehead. I mean, it's just gonna be hard to fit it specifically to the plan. It doesn't fit. So by us having you go back, I think it's going to probably come to the same outcome, and it's going to come back to us in a matter of, I don't know, a couple months' time. And so that's, I'm okay. I don't want to waste anybody's time. Staff's busy. So going back to them is the option, but when I propose to do something different with this location, if you really want to have the whalehead and have that art somewhere, I think it's better suited in a park. So I know that's not direction to staff, but that's talking with you, or my comments to you being that I don't think it's going to come back in a favorable thing of having a whalehead there. It just doesn't fit per our rules. So the direction I guess I'm putting in is that we do send it back there, but I think we're going to waste a lot of time.
Through the chair.
Irene, please.
Reviewing what I said, I'm tending to agree with Councilman Medina. We can't send it back and have you change it so that it doesn't. It can't be fish or fowl. It can either be a whale and be all the things that you want it to be, or not there at all. I tend to agree with Marty that we can't do that. So I withdraw my idea about sending it back without prejudice because it won't work.
Okay. Any other comments? Michael?
I would just add that I don't think when any of the standards were written, anybody envisioned a whalehead. And so today it's whaleheads, tomorrow something else. And we can't possibly anticipate every single project that could potentially come up within the city. And sometimes we have to go back and rethink why we did certain things and whether some exceptions or some changes to that are required. And if at the end of the day we decide we don't want anything whimsical anywhere in the city, then that's fine. That should be in the code, and then no one would even bother suggesting it. As I mentioned before, I didn't particularly like the whalehead, and I think that Jack in the Box took all their clown heads down a long time ago, and we just don't see that kind of thing anymore. And there's probably a reason for it. I don't know, but if we are going to go the route that we don't want to allow this kind of thing anywhere else, and like Marty said, maybe it's one gas station today, and then now all the gas stations want it. Maybe we just want to say flat out, this is not something that we want anywhere. And if that's really our position, then I would tend to agree that there's no sense in revisiting it. So if staff is saying that based on what you believe are your parameters, there's no way we would ever approve this type of thing or some similar art project that doesn't quite meet a building, the standards we set forth for a building, then there definitely is no no sense in doing it. But I think that there is some flexibility there, and we do need to think about what exceptions we are willing to make and be flexible in that. So let me put that back to staff then. So given what we've been through, and I know, David, you've been through this a few times already, do you see any possibility that there is some version of this project that could get approved?
Through the chair, when you indicated, Councilmember, that something whimsical couldn't be anywhere, that isn't the case. Actually, the code talks about districts and areas. And what's before you tonight is, given the Navy Site and Environment Specific Plan and the general plan for this area, for this district, does this fit at this location, which is within the Navy Site and Environment Specific Plan? So a concept like this could be appropriate, perhaps somewhere else. But that's really up to you to decide. And the Planning Commission and Architecture Review Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Planning Commission, looked at this and fundamentally looked at these findings that I cited, and then came up with the more detailed findings that we described in the staff report. Their sense, our sense, we support that, is that at this location, this particular development proposal is not consistent with the general plan or with the Navy Site and Environment Specific Plan for this district in this area, given past work of the city defining a vision for this area of San Bruno.
Let me ask you one more question. If there was nothing on that corner and someone were to propose to build that same gas station there today, would we approve it?
Again, the policy documents would be our guide. As staff, we would refer the applicant to the Navy Site and Environment Specific Plan and the design guidelines and development standards within that document and our general plan, and ask them to work with that, and then whatever they would come up with in terms of a proposed project, we would evaluate and make a recommendation to the Architecture Review Committee, Planning Commission, and ultimately to yourselves through a process like this.
Excuse me, I think what the council member is asking specifically as an example, if there was no gas station as we speak, and a gas station wanted to come in there, would they, going through the process, would that opportunity and business be afforded? That's, I believe,
Thank you.
Councilman's.
Appreciate the clarification.
No problem.
Thank you very much. A gas station, yes. A gas station could be approved at that location. But in terms of the design features, that would be open to evaluation. Was that the response you were looking for?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Not for now. Anything else from the council members? Any action from council?
I'm going to make it simple. Although I did indicate in the beginning that I'd like to see it go back to council. The more I listen, the more I talk. I kind of have to go back to my gut instinct when I went through the staff report and all the details, and that is it's just not the right place and the right location. I don't want to see something like this down the street in the new development of the new hotel or across the street. I think it's a distraction. I think it is whimsical. Again, it is a distraction, and that is my reason for a no vote and continuing to uphold the denial.
So,
Irene, please.
well, are you making a motion to uphold the Planning Commission's recommendation?
Would you like me to?
Yes.
I make a motion that we uphold the Planning Commission's recommendation.
And I second it.
No. There's a motion on the floor. Does everybody understand the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no?
No.
All right. Thank you. With that, I appreciate everybody's time and diligence here this evening, and we're going to take a few minutes a break.
And Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
before
I'm
you
sorry.
do that, just so the record is clear, the motion to uphold the Planning Commission's decision was made on a 4-1 vote, and we will bring back a resolution for the City Council with detailed findings at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be taking a few minutes break.
doesn't walk up the stairs, he just jumps on up. Okay, let's call the meeting back into order, please. All right, now we're going to, as you know, we moved up, receive the annual report from the Planning Commission. We're going to have Chairman Chase be as kind to come to the podium and give the annual report for the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. It is my pleasure to present to you at this time the 2017 Planning Commission Annual Report. We do have a bullet point presentation, and David will be clicking the slides as I hopefully get through them correctly. All right, so let's start with, if we will, planning commissioners who served in 2017. Those are Marie Kael, she was the chair until August. Myself, beginning in September, I became the chair. Rick Biasotti, he is the vice chair. Mary Lou Johnson, who was here earlier, she's a commissioner. Sundra Mishra, who retired. Perry Peterson, who will never retire. Joe Samut, who retired. Sophie Legacy, Kelly Letton, and Linda Mason. Those are the current and past members of 2017 planning commissioners. At the same time, we also had a council liaison, which was former city council member Ken Ibarra. You know what? It's much easier having space up there than doing it right here. Sorry about that. Okay, next. Oh, David's already got it. Sorry, David. So, planning commissioners who have retired. Joe Samut, who was appointed to the San Bruno Commission on January 1996. Sundra Mishra, who was appointed in 2004, and Marie Kael, who was appointed in 2015. All of which are sorely missed. New planning commissioners, Sophie Legacy, Kelly Letton, and Linda Mason, who are a really good acquisition to the commission. So your selection was quite awesome. So just to highlight a few of the significant activities from 2017. We have the amendment to the accessory dwelling unit, the ADU ordinance. This particular ordinance is recommended for approval by the Planning Commission in January. It's in response to changes in the state law. As you can see here, the bullet point, it's a small internal or detached secondary dwelling unit up to 640 square feet with complete independent living facilities. Low-cost infill housing that serves different populations ranging from students and young professionals to young families. Next slide, Dave. Then we can go into the Skyline College residential project. Now, towards the end of 2017, it came before the Planning Commission. Over the next 30 days, we're hopeful that this proposal will come before the City Council for their consideration. And next slide, please. We have improvements to the Bay Hill Shopping Center. This is somewhat self-explanatory, you know, when you're looking at it, but there are some significant improvements that the owners and Planning Commission wants to get to. Number one, changing the color. They want to enhance the pedestrian pathways with new site furnishings, which include decorative bike racks throughout the shopping center, which are kind of whimsical, if you will. So the city's not quite, you know, anti-whimsical, contrary to popular belief. New drought-tolerant landscaping, a new color scheme throughout the shopping center, LED lighting throughout the parking lot, which will be a huge improvement. New rooftop mechanical screening, which will eliminate from view any of the mechanical devices that are up there on the roof. And, so on. There's enhancements to all the existing trash enclosures and new master sign program, which that is really pretty critical, and replacement of the 2 existing monument signs. And those 2 signs are the ones that are on up by the Starbucks as you pull in, and then over by, pulling in towards the former, Radio Shack area. What was the street? Nueve. Okay, that's the other restaurant, correct. Now, moving forward, next slide if we could, are the goals for 2018. As we move forward into 2018, there are a few of the goals the Planning Commission will be working towards accomplishing, and they're very doable. Number 1 is a zoning code update. The last fully comprehensive zoning code update was done back in 1982, quite a bit ago. So we really need to update it in order to reflect new regulations, community vision, the transit corridor plan, and the general plan. So that's something that we will definitely be striving to have done and get that accomplished. Secondly, we have a climate action plan. And what that is basically is we're looking to reduce the greenhouse emissions. And again, even though, I'll keep my political views out of it, this is, once again, it's a no-brainer. It's going to take some time, but, it's a realistic goal, and we're looking forward to accomplishing that. Next slide, if you would. I have the outlook for 2018. That's a different one. There we go. Thank you. Did I skip one? Am I out of order on that, David? Okay, cool. Just want to make sure. Yeah, I'm hard to follow, let me tell you. So for the outlook for 2018, and these are some of the projects that are anticipated to come before the Commission for consideration. 271 El Camino Real, the former Lee's Buffet site. That will be monumental if that gets accomplished. I mean, that has been vacant forever, so that's great. 111 San Bruno Avenue, it's a proposed 5-story mixed-use building located across the street from the Caltrain station, 62 dwellings, and approximately 8,500 square feet of commercial flooring or commercial space. So that's the former National Bank site, again, one that's been vacant for a number of years. And then we have 850 El Camino Real, which is the former Budget Motel site. Next slide, please. Okay, now we have redevelopment. And this is at the Mills Park Center. And it's 4.6 acres that look to be developed, 2 5-story mixed-use buildings, 327 dwelling units, 21,000 square foot of retail space. So that's a redevelopment issue, and hopefully that'll be another goal that we can accomplish in 2018. Next slide. Okay. Back one, if you would. Looking for the San Mateo Avenue Street. There we go. Okay, so the next one, and this is basically public project in this particular instance. San Mateo Avenue Streetscape Plan and the Downtown Comprehensive Parking Plan. Again, those are goals that we feel are easily attainable in the coming year. Next slide. Basically, it's going to be the projects on the horizon. There we are. The first one I actually have here is the Bay Hill specific plan, Michael. There we are, thank you. That's 98 acres, and it's bounded by San Bruno Avenue, El Camino Real, Highway 280, and Interchange 380. So that particular project, that's going to require working with the property owner of the Bay Hill, residents of that area, and the Community Development Department, headed by David Waldering. And we will be striving to develop a strong vision for this area. So hopefully that will come to fruition. And lastly, in that case, a redevelopment of the shops at Tan Fran. There we go. So this will be accomplished by, again, working with the owners of Tan Fran to either develop and or redevelop portions of the property. That's another exciting thing that's coming down the road here in this coming year. So hopefully I covered everything on this report. If not, you'll have to speak to my boss, okay? So anyway, that does conclude the 2017 Planning Commission Annual Report. Appreciate your time. Not that I was a nervous wreck, but thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the chairman? If not,
right.
As Mayor Wang would say, we want to thank you very much for all that you and the commission do. You've had new members you've had to bring up to speed. You've had a lot of great talent that, as you said, have retired, and some that may not anytime soon.
Exactly.
But in all sincerity, you're dealing with a lot, and there's a lot going on for the department to deal with and a lot for the commission. So we sincerely appreciate your time, your effort. It's not just 2 meetings a month, it's also ARC review and other things that you're dealing with for all that you get, which is free for your time and your volunteerism to this community. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure. I mean, I know, speaking for myself, if I if I didn't enjoy it still, I'd be gone. So I think that's probably pretty much how all the other commissioners feel, and we got a great staff. It makes it a lot easier to get our job done when you got a good staff behind you. So kudos to them as well. Okay? And you're going to do a great job. Have a great year. I think I'm going to go home.
Thank you, Chair Chase. Now we'll move on to public comment.
Public comment, it is the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. And our first person is Raina.
Raina, are you speaking on public comment or to the dogs in the park? See, I told you I'd be watching out for you. Plus, I don't want you having to get back up if you don't have to. Are there any members from the public?
Trying to keep you awake, Raina.
Sorry. If not, now if we'll move on to the conduct of business.
Okay, conduct of business, item A. Receive recommendations from the Parks and Recreation Commission regarding leashed dogs in city parks and provide direction to staff.
Thank you, Vicki. Director Burns.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. By way of background, the city's municipal code prohibits all but service animals, whether on or off leash, from entering all city parks except the dog run at Commodore Park. In fall 2016, the City Council expressed interest in receiving input from the Parks and Recreation Commission on how to address the frequent presence of dogs, both on and off leash in city parks. In early 2017, the Commission recommended to the City Council that unleashed dogs be allowed in city parks. Following on the Commission's recommendation, the City Council authorized a 6-month pilot program from April 24 through October 23rd of 2017. The pilot program allowed unleashed dogs on paved pathways in City Park and Grundy Park. No other parks were included in the pilot program. Signs announcing the pilot program and waste bag kiosks were installed at the entrances of the 2 parks. The pilot program was announced on the city's website, Nextdoor, the Community Services Department e-newsletter, San Bruno Cable, Police Department social media sites, and email blasts to recreation program patrons. At the conclusion of the pilot program, staff presented the results to the City Council. In summary, the police department concluded the pilot program did not create a public safety concern or significant public nuisance, and determined that responding to off-leash dog violations on a complaint basis would not likely create a significant additional burden on police department resources. Additionally, the Parks Maintenance Division did not experience an impact as a result of the pilot program and saw no difference in the number of dogs or an increase in dog feces in city parks, including City Park and Grundy Park. During the pilot program, the Community Services Department was contacted about the pilot program on 9 occasions. On 4 occasions, the citizens expressed support for the pilot program, and on 5 occasions, the citizens did not want dogs either on or off leash in any city park. The City Council requested the results of the pilot program be shared with the Parks and Recreation Commission and requested the Commission's input on which parks, if any, dogs should be allowed and the rules regulating their activity. At its special meeting on December 6, 2017, the Parks and Recreation Commission received a report on the results of the pilot program. The Commission expressed concern about allowing dogs in the city's smaller parks and tot lots, where there is inadequate space to accommodate both children playing and dogs. By unanimous vote of the commissioners present, the Commission recommended that dogs be allowed in 14 of the 20 city parks. Those parks with small footprints or designated as tot lots were not included in the recommended parks. Specifically, the Commission recommends the following to the City Council. Dogs be allowed in 14 of the 20 parks as follows: Bayshore Circle, Bel Air Park / Lions Field, Buckeye, City Park, Commodore, Earl Glenview, Fleetwood, Florida Avenue, Forest Lane, Grundy, Monteverde, Pacific Heights, 7th Avenue, and 7th and Walnut Parks. Further, the Commission recommends that dogs be prohibited from 6 city parks as follows: the Catalpa Tot Lot, Fleetwood Tot Lot, Herman Park, Lomita Park, Ponderosa Park, and Posey Park. Owners and handlers have no more than 3 dogs leashed under their control. Owners and handlers should be required to keep the dogs on a non-retractable leash at all times with a maximum length of 6 feet. Owners and handlers should be responsible for promptly cleaning up after dogs. Dogs should be restricted from entering the surfaces surrounding play equipment and synthetic turf areas. And dogs should be permitted throughout the recommended parks and not be required to remain on park pathways. The implementation cost associated with the Park and Recreation Commission's recommendation would be approximately $8,300, with funding available in the Parks Maintenance Division operating budget. In the event the City Council wishes to modify the municipal code currently prohibiting dogs in all city parks, staff would return at an upcoming meeting of the City Council with a draft ordinance for introduction. I would be happy to respond to any questions, as would the Parks and Recreation Commission Chairman Mike Palmer and Parks Field Supervisor Dan Venezia, who are both here this evening.
And before we open that up, and Raina, before you come up, just for point of information clarification, Michael Salazar and Laura Davis were on the Park and Recreation Commission when this item was discussed, and they did take a vote on it. And so does that change anything as far as us going forward on this topic?
No, it does not. There's no financial or other conflict of interest. They can participate.
Okay, and that's just for disclosure for everybody involved. Absolutely. Why don't we go ahead, and if there are any questions to staff, or can I open it up to Raina real quick? Raina, you waited all night.
Good evening and Happy New Year to everyone. And I'm speaking for Bowie and Bruno. Thank you so much for taking, for giving the opportunity for San Bruno to be pet friendly. We really, really appreciate it. it hasn't been that many complaints. And San Bruno residents are actually learning how to clean after their four-legged kids. We never would call them dogs, four-legged kids. So I want to thank you for that opportunity, and I would like to know when the ordinance will be amended to allow dogs in the park. Another request that I will have is like myself and the Bruno and Bowie's dog walker have suggested if we can ask for a trash bin put at the end of where the park ends, on Saint Philippe, because if they pick up after their pets, there's no a place where to put it, so they leave it there, and we always pick it up to put it in our trash because it's hard to go back to a trash bin where it's located. Do you know what I'm talking about? So if we can actually have one there, like as they're exiting the park, it'll be a great idea. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Any questions from council to Director Burns or Chairman Palmer from the commission? No? So this is obviously, we're here to receive the recommendations, which we are from the Park and Recreation Commission, and provide direction to staff, which if we direct them, they can bring back an ordinance based on the findings of the staff report. What's the council's pleasure?
Through the chair.
Yes, Irene.
Oh, I have a question first. On number 2, Carrie, it says Posey Park. What is that now? Is there really a Posey Park anymore?
Mike.
I apologize. There is Posey Park where the Centennial Mosaic mural is at the base of the grade separation train station. So that's where Posey Park is. And it's all concrete, but the commission felt it necessary to address all of the parks under their charge.
Okay.
So we added it to the list for completeness.
Okay, thank you. So I have a bunch of comments that
Please.
Nobody's going to be happy about, but I'm going to say them anyway. I appreciate us being pet friendly. I've had dogs for a total of 30-some years, except this really disturbs me. It seems like we're no longer going to be kid friendly. We're going to allow the parks to be taken over by dogs. It says owner handlers should be required, not must be, should be required to keep the dogs on a non-retractable leash at all times with a maximum leash length of 6 feet. So picture a person walking with 3 dogs on a 6-foot, I'm 6 foot. So you have 3 dogs 6 foot away from you walking through 7th Avenue Park that has only 2 little paths on each side through the grass. Well, where are the kids supposed to play? I mean, that picture is disturbing to me. And the number 7, dogs should be permitted throughout the listed parks and not be required to remain on the park pathways. Where's the place for the kids? I mean, parks are for kids. I love dogs. I own dogs. I have dogs, but I have 3 kids that love playing in the parks, and I mean, it just appalls me to think that we are going to allow dogs off the pathways. We're going to allow people to have 3 dogs on 6-foot length leashes walking through where kids are supposed to be kicking balls and running around. I'm sorry. So I don't think that number 7 should be done at all. I think they should be, if you want to walk your dog through a park that has a pathway that leads from one end to the other, which like for Grundy Park, I know it goes through a couple of street things and has a pathway from one street to the other. That's perfectly fine. I know we have it at City Park where we walk the dogs through it. That's perfectly fine. But to have 14 parks where the dogs are going to be able to run around even on 6-foot leashes, I don't approve of. I don't think it's right.
Other comments?
Did you want to go next, Michael?
You can go.
Okay.
Or Davis?
So as a Park and Rec Commissioner, the discussion regarding dogs in parks has been a discussion for many, many years. And, a lot of owners have come forward wanting a place to bring their dogs. A number of the cities all on the peninsula now allow dogs. A number of facilities now allow dogs. I travel a lot, and I'm in the airports and I'm seeing dogs. I see dogs at Tanforan. They're around, and it's becoming more and more acceptable. It's also more about having responsible owners. The other thing about this ordinance is it puts in place some guidelines, because without it, they're still bringing the dogs to the park. It's very difficult to actually police having a dog in a park, but only on the pathway. So I think that was a discussion that the commission had, was that if you're going to allow the dog in the park, let's make them be responsible. And the other option, the other point about Councilmember O'Connell is the 6-foot length on the leash is a standard length of the leash. So if I went down to Walgreens right now and bought a leash for my dog, it's a 6-foot length. It's pretty typical. And I think the report and the staff from the police department was there weren't very many incidents. I think the bigger incidents are owners being in parks that aren't allowed, or being in any location allowed, whether it's walking down the street in my own neighborhood and leaving their dog residue behind. I think we just need to encourage responsible dog owners and allow dogs in parks.
Anything from Marty or Michael?
I would like to hear from Michael, being on the Planning Commission. I'm sorry, from our Park and Rec Commission. But I have a comment.
Sure.
Well, I had my own concerns initially, because like Irene, I felt that the parks really were for children and not dogs. But I think we have to commend dog owners in the city for having policed themselves. And I've seen comments on Nextdoor where they're calling each other out and they're making sure that they're responsible. And any concerns I had, I think, were I was proven that those concerns weren't valid, because we really haven't seen any concerns. We haven't had anybody bitten, and hasn't really been any contention. Another concern I had early on was that by changing the law to say that they had to be on leashes and certain things, it would create some expectation that we would somehow be able to enforce that. And I don't think we've really had an issue where we've had to make a concerted effort to add more enforcement, and there weren't any complaints even during the test period. So overall, I think it was a successful test. I think the dog owners have proven that they are responsible, and being that we haven't had any concerns, I really don't have any new concerns in terms of allowing the dogs in the parks.
Marty?
So I'm sensitive to Councilwoman O'Connell's comments. I have a 5-year-old. I remember being very cautious at any time with my son, anywhere where there's a dog. It could be like that. I'm a little surprised it went this far. But I understand that we had some good results from our temporary policy. I'm interested in how the 3 dogs, I can imagine 3 little dogs could be under control, but 3 large dogs, again, depending on the owner. But I recall hearing of one instance not too long ago about a dog owner not really complying with just only one time. So I don't think I'm going to get a dog at some point. My son's only 5, so it's probably another year, because I don't want to be walking him all the time by myself. So the idea of a non-retractable leash, they may make them, but I see, everybody with the other leashes. But and my question for staff would be, What's the violation? How when that does occur, how does that work? When somebody calls in, hey, there's 4 dogs, somebody's walking or with them through the park, that takes a phone call and police officer comes out, and what kind of the steps are, what the cost of that ticket, or is it full, I'm guessing, discretion from the officer to figure out what the story is? You get a verbal warning the first time. But I can imagine if 8 different dog owners decided that they wanted to walk in the park at one of the Walnut or otherwise, they could, and they could kind of take over part of the park. Maybe not the responsible people that show up to the meetings and that have been very good about their dogs and cleaning up after other dogs, but that is a concern of mine. I know if there might be other people too where I probably wouldn't go there that day if I saw too many dogs running around. My son probably wants to get over there. So I'm just kind of sensitive about that, and there's no limit on how many people could have dogs in the park. They all could have 3. But I'm in favor of the overall process that we're going through to allow the dogs in the park. I'm just not 100% convinced that free reign through the park on a leash is a really controllable situation for the non-responsible dog owners. So that's my comments for now.
So, Mr. Medina had questions in regards to citations or the process of that, or how that would be perceived to be done at this time. I know the ordinance isn't here.
Can I make a comment about that, though, as well?
Okay. Hold on. So you spoke, and you haven't had an opportunity. So yes, let us hear from the chief first to answer the councilman's question.
Good evening. A brief summary of how a call for service such as that works. We don't get a lot, and I did do a little research prior to this evening to kind of determine how often we're called for these types of things, and it's very, very infrequent. A violation of this code is a violation of the municipal code section, so we would treat it like we would treat any of the other municipal code section, which gives us 2 options. One is to treat it as a citation, an infraction, where somebody would receive a citation and they would basically go to traffic court, similar to any other type of infraction. The other option is the municipal code does allow for these code violations to be prosecuted as misdemeanors, and that would involve a discussion with the city attorney for the city to actually prosecute that. It would not go through the district attorney's office like a normal misdemeanor crime would. The practical aspect of it, as far as somebody called about, or somebody mentioned about when the police officers get called and go out there, yes, we do try to resolve these issues at the lowest level. More often than not, if it's a call that involves someone who's not in immediate danger, it'll take a few minutes to get out there, and more often than not, we find that the alleged infraction is no longer occurring, and an infraction at this level has to be committed in an officer's presence for him or her to take any action. So there are some challenges with enforcement, but we did participate in the pilot program and learned a lot from that, and continuously check the parks that we've been asked to check. So so far it's worked well.
Okay. Karen, you want us to speak, please?
My name is Karen Cromosini, and I would like to talk about this issue. Thank you for all your help, what you did, that we can take the dogs finally into the parks and that. But like Irene says, the parks are there for the children. The parks are there for families, and to dog owners they are family, and they really would like to take them there. I understand that there are some dog owners that do not watch their dog and let them misbehave and everything, but there are some people that do have their dog under control, and they would like to take them everywhere. I take mine also to Tamfaran and places, because she is for me everything. Yeah, I have my children and my grandchildren. They come and visit me with the dog. Yeah, so to me, it is family. Yeah, and I have a real good dog. She listens very well, and she does not bother people or other dogs. So I really would like to keep it up. And there are always people who don't pick up after the dog. It makes me angry. And there are also people who don't watch their children and let them run around loose and do other things. So it's, it happens. It's the people themselves who take responsibility of their children or of other, or of their pets. So for me, I love my dog and I would like to take him everywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. So, Laura, you have...
I just wanted to make an additional comment. Thank you, the chief, for explaining some of the comments or questions that you had, Councilmember Medina. But I wanted to say that as a resident, as a softball coach, as a baseball coach, as a basketball coach, I've spent many hours in San Bruno Park and other parks in San Bruno, and I will tell you that there have always been dogs, but there are responsible dog owners. And I am definitely concerned about safety, and I think that's why it's taken the commission this many years to get to this point, because safety is definitely number one. Item 6 in the recommendation indicates that dogs are not restricted from entering any type of children's play area. But I also think as parents, as dog owners, we also do the same thing. If we feel that a dog's aggressive, we feel a dog should be around children, people are not afraid to speak up, and owners are not afraid to move their dogs. But I've seen a lot of dogs in the parks, and it's impossible for the police to enforce it. Because like he said, you make a phone call, they show up, well, that was 30 minutes ago, that was 20 minutes ago, that was an hour ago, and they're no longer there. We need to make sure that we have responsible dog owners, that they follow a policy. If there's wording in the recommendation that we want to change, handlers are required to keep the dogs at on a non-retractable leash. If you feel that 3 dogs is maybe too much, does it make a big difference to change it to 2 dogs? I mean, I'd like to see if there's any additional comments or changes to that, but I get what the comments are, but I think safety has been a concern, and like you said, there hasn't been the incidents that support the concerns.
I was just saying, personally, I think it should be, shall be, should be, not must. Must be, not should be. I also had the question maybe to staff, but you two were on the body was just the 3 versus 2. 3 can get. I thought it was 3. Oh, okay. So I was trying to understand too the 2 between the 3. We talked about the park pathway. I think some of the other comments Irina had was, again, 6-foot leash is still a long way for the dog to take over a park. If there were 3 dogs going through and it was a small park, there is no limitation on how many dogs can be in a park, but I don't know how you can't really regulate that, and so. But yes, I do believe it should be must be. I'm just questioning on the 2 versus 3.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that came up from the rule that allows someone to own 3 dogs in a household. The notion that any household could have 3 dogs, but that was the limit. And so I think what the commission was thinking was if 3 dogs lived in a household, the family could take, or somebody could take all 3 of them for a walk.
Anything? Other comments from council?
I was only going to comment that I believe the language that's in here is really based on the recommendation coming from the commission, so it's not really intended to be the legalese that would ultimately be in the ordinance.
You're correct. We're here to give recommendation and comments to staff on what to do and or to bring back an ordinance if we wish. I did have a question on the 2 versus 3, but I know we don't have specific, is it a law or what have you, so if you know it, you do. I wouldn't expect you have to know that.
Yeah, I think I've lost track of the number of dogs we have. we're having a discussion about that here, as you can see, and I think we're fairly convinced that there is some sort of limit. We think it's 3. I don't happen to know that, but I'll rely on these folks. I think that's really, though, a separate issue, and just because you're allowed 3 dogs or allowed 10 dogs in a household doesn't necessarily mean that you should be allowed to walk that many dogs at the same time in a park for the other reasons that council members may have stated. And if you do want an ordinance brought back, we can certainly do that. Somebody did have a question about how long would it take. I'll just answer that now if you don't mind. So it requires 2 readings. So it could come back possibly at the next city council meeting, although we don't know what that agenda looks like. But then after the second reading at the second city council meeting, the ordinance would not go into effect for 30 days. So there's a 30 days that before it would go into effect. So realistically, you're looking at probably another couple of months before that it would go into effect.
Thank you. Yes, Karen.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may add, that 30-day sort of waiting implementation period will be particularly helpful to the Parks Division. We'll have to refabricate all the signs for the parks that will now allow dogs, and we've got that as a consideration under the fiscal impact. And we've started working on that language and have had some discussions with the city attorney as well.
Okay, council, we've had some discussion, and what's the direction of the council as well as to staff? Marty?
Yeah. These dogs need to all be licensed, right? Is that right?
That is a requirement through San Mateo County.
Okay.
Direction from council, please.
With that, I would recommend that we accept the Park and Rec Commission's recommendations and move forward on changing the ordinance.
So do we want to make any modifications to like must be, not should be, or?
I think we could leave it to the city attorney to make the appropriate word choices.
So normally, what I would recommend for an ordinance like this is that if there's a requirement, it should be a requirement. Otherwise, it certainly can't be enforced at all. So I would recommend that the 3 leash dogs, the non-retractable leash with a maximum length of 6 feet, responsible for promptly cleaning up, that those items be mandatory. And then we'll come up with appropriate wording for the other items which are permissive. But I think if that's the direction of the city council, we can make the other requirements mandatory.
Is there anything else to give direction to the attorney? And we'll see if any. Marty, what would you like to do? We're just having a direction to staff.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm in favor of this, of having the dogs in the park. I just wanted to have a better understanding. I believe we've shown, our dog owners have shown that they can be responsible, and those that are not, they'll suffer the consequences.
Yes, City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that you have a motion on the floor from Councilmember Salazar. And yes, this item does envision direction to staff, but we would appreciate a motion or an actual vote as well that includes your direction.
We can do that.
Okay.
Mr. Salazar, are you good with making that a motion?
I will make a motion to accept the recommendations as stated in the staff report from the Park and Rec Commission to bring back an ordinance.
And just so we're clear, is that with mandatory language in numbers 3, 4, and 5, and 6?
And wherever else necessary.
Okay, I understood.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been a motion made to second to go move this forward and bring back an ordinance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
4-1. Please bring back the ordinance. Next item on the agenda, please. Vicki.
Item B, receive report and confirm appointment of city council members to city council subcommittees as liaisons to the city's citizens advisory commissions, boards, and committees, as representatives and alternates of San Mateo County and other regional agencies.
City Manager Jackson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, The City Council annually reviews its assignments of City Council members to a variety of different responsibilities, both inside of the city as well as within the region. You have a list in front of you of the broad range of those assignments that are typically filled by one or more council members. And we're bringing this forward tonight with the additional interest to see that the City Council is addressing the opportunity to put the newly elected City Council members into spots that have been previously filled by outgoing council members. So you have a variety of areas of these representative responsibilities that are open. What you have tonight, it represents information that was considered by Mayor Medina and assignments that he has identified as being appropriate according to our municipal code. The mayor has the authority and the responsibility to make assignments subject to the ratification by the City Council. So that's what we're here for tonight, and look forward to your actions so that we can start the new year quickly with getting the right people doing the right things.
I was going to say through the chair. First and foremost, there's a lot of regional agencies and county agencies, and so first and foremost, people don't realize the time that it takes. So I'm here, and I want to publicly thank Irene O'Connell because she serves on a lot of these bodies, and she takes not just a little bit of passion and devotion to them. She sits on subcommittees. She volunteers herself to other committees of those regional boards and agencies, and has been doing it for has a lot of history and a lot of knowledge. So I want to acknowledge that, because what she also does is she attends during the business day in the evening hours, and so thank you. And on behalf of the city, because you do a lot. So with that, what I've done is, you will notice there is not subcommittees, because what we're going to do is, my belief is, going forward, we will propose ad hoc committees for individual items that need to be brought forward that staff or others feel, or the council does, as Irene has brought to, that she'd like to see come forward. And therefore, we make an appointment. I'll make an appointment at that time with very specified parameters, expectation, guidelines, so that we're all on the same page as a council, and we bring back that information to the council for further review. So for this time, we do have two that are still open that we're still working on. But are there any questions or comments from council on the report? I guess silence is good.
Any questions?
And again, it doesn't mean if somebody needs to move around or needs something else because of some change in their schedule or appointments, please let us know. We'll work with you. Next item, please, Vicki.
Item C, adopt resolution approving the installation of new stop signs at the intersection of San Mateo Avenue and Genevan Avenue.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight, I will be presenting three separate items which were previously brought to the city's Traffic Safety and Parking Committee, otherwise known as TSPC. The TSPC reviews traffic matters brought to the committee by staff after staff evaluation is completed, and then the committee provides the recommendation. And once the recommendation is made by the TSPC, these items are brought to the council for consideration and approval. So this first item in front of you tonight is regards to the proposed new stop sign at the intersection of Genevan and San Mateo Avenue. The San Mateo Avenue is the core of city's downtown, which consists of shops, restaurants, and other type of businesses, and provides safe travel. And providing a safe travel paths for patrons coming to downtown is important to the city. And along the entire stretch of San Mateo Avenue, there are only two traffic signals, one at the intersection of San Mateo Avenue and San Bruno, and the other at San Mateo and Huntington Avenue. In addition, there are some stop control at the intersection of San Mateo and Keynes, and San Mateo and Angus, and at San Mateo and Sylvan. However, the one intersection that currently doesn't have a stop control or traffic signal is at the intersection of San Mateo and Genevieve, and this intersection is one of the locations often used by vehicles and pedestrians to access the downtown. Staff received a request to evaluate the installation of an all-way stop at the intersection, and in order to determine whether the stop signs can be installed, staff reviewed the criteria for implementation of a multi-way stop based on the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Device to determine whether it meets the criteria. The vehicle volumes and collision histories were reviewed and determined that the data collected does not meet the requirement for an all-way stop. Although the data doesn't meet the requirements, MUTCD allows the installation of a stop control to control vehicle and pedestrian conflicts near locations that generate high level of pedestrian activity, such as in the downtown corridor, to prevent any potential accidents. Pedestrian safety study was completed by engineering firm TJKM for San Mateo Avenue that concluded that this intersection experienced significantly higher volumes of pedestrian traffic. So staff is evaluated and recommended to install the stop control at this intersection, and which was presented to the TSGC, and it was accepted. And staff is here tonight to obtain council's approval to convert the intersection at this intersection to an all-way stop control, as the council retains the authority to do that. So this concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff?
Chair?
Mr. Salazar.
Jimmy, can you elaborate on why this item came forward? Was there a specific concern, that prompted us to look at the intersection?
Yeah, so normally we receive requests from residents, and so this was one of the locations that we received, and through that we had to evaluate it as part of the city's, the process for receiving request.
So do you know off the top of your head, did the request come from just someone who happens to walk downtown a lot, or was it a business owner? Do we know?
It was a resident.
It was a
yes.
resident. Okay. And what did we find from the pedestrian study in terms of numbers of pedestrians?
So, I'm glad I brought this with me here. So, the pedestrian study indicated that there are three locations that experienced really high volumes. One was at the mid-block crossing of Angus and Sylvan, and the other was this intersection, and the other was at the mid-block crossing between Cypress Court and El Camino, between Cypress and Camino. So this crossing, it states that there were 141 east-west crossings over the peak hours.
Okay, and then the current stop sign is for traffic approaching San Mateo, but not
That's correct.
flowing across San Mateo. And so do we anticipate any impact on the traffic then going down San Mateo if cars are forced to stop even without pedestrians in the area?
I don't anticipate that at all, because there's really, the cars are driving really slow in through the area, and then nowadays, without the stop sign being there, cars are normally slowing down to ensure that they don't hit oncoming traffic, vehicles coming through the Genevieve as well.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Other questions from council? Irene?
Oh, not a question, just a comment. I've used that intersection many, many, many times, often 3 or 4 times a day, and part of the problem with that, I think, is that people aren't sure if they're supposed to stop or not, and so you see them hesitating, and then you see people behind them getting upset, and then you see people trying to go left or right, and then all things kind of jumble up. So I think this is a great solution. I think it'll, after an initial learning period where people realize yes, they really do have to stop, it'll smooth out what happens, and I believe pedestrians will also, I personally, will also feel safer crossing knowing that people are supposed to stop. So unless there's...
Any other comments from council? If not,
okay,
we have a resolution.
I will introduce the resolution.
Vicki?
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Medina.
Aye. Next item, please.
Item D, adopt resolution approving designation of red curb bus zones at 850 Cherry Avenue and 950 Elm Avenue.
This second item is regards to the establishment of shuttle bus stops at two office buildings located at 850 Cherry and 950 Elm Avenue, which is occupied by Walmart. And Walmart uses charter buses to transport their employees traveling between their offices between San Bruno and Pleasanton. And currently, there's a white curb passenger loading zone located at 850 Cherry, which is approximately 33 feet long. And at 950 Elm, the existing shuttle stop is located in the parking lot behind the building. So a representative from Walmart requested staff to evaluate lengthening the loading zone at 850 Cherry and providing new loading zone at 950 Elm to accommodate larger 45-foot-long shuttle buses due to increased ridership. The San Bruno General Plan promotes alternative modes of transportation, encourages employers to offer transit to reduce vehicle miles traveled and the associated traffic congestions and air pollution. And so staff reviewed the request, and based on the city's policy for establishment of special parking restrictions on public streets, and requests for loading zones fall into category C as defined in the policy, which covers short-term parking. And these 5 conditions for establishment of the parking restrictions for category C is included in the staff report. And staff evaluated and determined that all 5 conditions were met and presented the results of the evaluation and recommendations to the city's TSPC. TSPC was in favor of converting the area to allow for larger shuttles to load and unload in front of the buildings. However, the installation of white zones was denied by the TSPC. And the reason is because the white zones are defined as passenger loading zones and can be used by not only shuttles but other vehicles as well. So instead, TSPC recommended installation of signs in front of both buildings to designate the shuttle stop using red curbs. And the San Bruno Municipal Code under Chapter 7 defines red curb to mean no stopping, standing, or parking any time except that a bus may be stopped in a red zone marked as a bus zone. And this will allow for shuttles to load and unload in front of the buildings while also preventing other vehicles from obstructing those shuttle stops. And staff is requesting council's approval to designate the larger shuttle stops using red curves at the 2 buildings. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council? Doesn't have to be, but but if not, yes,
Just
Mr.
one
Salazar.
very minor thing. Under fiscal impacts, where it talks about there being no cost to this, it sounds like this was already done, so we're just approving it after the fact?
That's correct. So I want to let you know that the city, we failed to bring it to the council to adopt the resolution previously, and that's the reason why we're doing it right now. So we lost track of this item. Yeah.
All right. Let's not let that happen again.
So that was a total of 1,569 just for the record, but
which was paid by Walmart.
Yeah, right. Which was
Thank you.
taken care of. But thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions or comments from council?
No. I'll introduce the
Thank you.
resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Medina.
Aye. Next item, please, Vicki.
Okay, this third and last TSPC item
It's all right,
was initially requested by the city's police department.
Jimmy's on a roll. Let him go.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Jimmy. Is it Vicky? Is that okay? He stole your thunder.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go for it.
No.
Item E, adopt resolution establishing parking restrictions at loading zones and police vehicle parking stall on City Parkway in San Bruno City Park and amending Resolution 1987-24.
Okay.
Thank you, Vicky. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Thank you. This third and last TSPC item was initially requested by the city's police department. The police department is proposing to establish a satellite police station in the southwest corner of the recreation building in City Park to provide an enhanced level of service to San Bruno residents, and requested Public Works Department to determine the viability of providing a dedicated police vehicle parking space in front of the rec center so that it's visible from the satellite location in order to deter vandalism to the vehicle. The Community Services Department also inquired whether additional loading zone spaces can be provided along City Parkway between the gazebo and swimming pool to accommodate the heavy loading activity that occurs in the area during summer camps. Staff evaluated the existing parking restrictions in front of the rec center to determine whether a new dedicated police space and additional loading zones can be provided. During the research, staff found that there were some discrepancies between the existing curb markings and the resolution 1987-24, which is attached to the staff report, that was approved, which established no stopping zones, loading zones, and accessible parking stalls on City Parkway, which was not updated to current conditions. So this slide, the City Parkway there, this slide here shows the proposed new curb markings in comparison to the existing. After further discussions with the Police and Community Services Department, staff is proposing to keep the existing curb markings and only modify the curb markings to create a police vehicle parking stall in front of the rec center near the gazebo and convert the no stopping zone between the existing loading zones to a yellow zone, and thereby creating one large yellow zone between the gazebo and the pool. So basically, there was a red zone there that's been converted to yellow, and then there's the yellow zone that's been converted to a white zone for the police vehicle there. So staff brought this item to the city's TSPC for the review and recommendations, and the TSPC was in favor of staff's recommendation, and in order to codify the parking restrictions, the resolution 1987-24 would need to be amended. This concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Question or comments for staff? I can say that I did go and just very quickly look at the satellite area that was going to be in the Veterans Memorial. I think it's a good idea. I think it's another way to be at another segment of the community, another area of town, and give other opportunity and options. The only thing is obviously many years ago, that was all open parking. Then it became red. Now we're modifying it to yellow. Then, what was then is not now, and I get that. But it did start to have for a lot of extra parking and double parking. So was there any concern that staff may have in regards to that length of that zone where people are going to be dropping off for various activities or summer activities, and maybe it'll get bottlenecked?
You're talking about the area near, are you referring to the area near the swimming pool?
Yes.
Yeah, and that was the reason why we wanted to convert it to the yellow zone, because in order to provide additional parking spaces for the people to use, because right now its existing condition is it's currently painted red. So by converting to yellow, we'll hopefully not have too many double parking in that area. And I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I think you did. I was just concerned that yellow in some people's world means 20 minutes. It means waiting outside for your child to finish with the class, to go into the locker room, to come out, and that 20 minutes could be just that. It could be longer. So I didn't know, that was my concern, was that we're opening up much more, and will that then, on special occasions when we have concerts in the park or other thing, will we now start losing that opportunity for emergency vehicles, for other vehicles that may need it? That was what I was thinking. Other comments from council?
Through the chair.
Laura?
So it's interesting you bring up the comment about it being all available parking years ago. And those were back in my teenage days where they allowed drinking in the park. And that was the reason why it got changed. And I know I was a strong advocate for changing that. Cars parked all along San Bruno Park and stood around and drank and just created a congestion and an unsafe environment. What's happened over the years, and I see this all the time, I was just at the park the other night, cars still do park in the red zone, and there's a lot of drop-off and pickup. I coach a 6th grade basketball team, and it's tough when parents are around the corner in the parking lot waiting for their kids to come out. So yes, you're going to get cars, they're going to be there for 10, 15 minutes, but they're in their vehicles. We're seeing it now. I think it's a great idea. It's a good change. I think it's a positive change. A lot of kids, and I'm more concerned about kids' safety and kids being able to go out to their parents' car, not crossing streets, so I think it's a good thing, and I'm great idea having the satellite police station as well.
And I know that wasn't you drinking.
Nope.
And
Nope.
that back when you were young. Irene, anything?
No, I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Marty?
I also like the police being there, and I think with the police being there, people are going to be more aware of being good drivers, and I think as we move forward with our plans for the rec center, we're going to have to configure something really drastic there. And I think that'll be resolved hopefully in the upcoming years real soon. But I think that I know that when I was dropping off my son at the pool, that we definitely wouldn't park in the red, but it congested everybody over there by the yellow. And so people were kind of waiting for somebody to get out, but I think that it'll work out. And I don't know if it may be a fog line painted to kind of help people just stay in that lane and not kind of waver over would be beneficial if you're just driving through. But I'm in favor of this.
Okay, would someone like to introduce the resolution? Sounds like most everybody's in favor.
I'll introduce the resolution.
And I'll second that.
Vicky?
Councilmember Salazar,
Yes.
Councilmember Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Yes.
Mayor Medina.
Aye. Next item, please.
Item F, adopt resolution authorizing purchase of one sewer lateral push camera from EnviroSite in the amount of $27,291.
Jimmy, please.
Hi, the city has been using closed-circuit television CCTV camera inspection equipment for a prolonged period of time to determine defects in our sewer collection system. The city has both the CCTV camera unit mounted on a small tractor that is capable of inspecting sewer mains, and two smaller push cameras that is mainly used to inspect smaller diameter pipelines where the tractor unit is unable to be used. Our city is somewhat unique as we still have some 5-inch sewer mains in the oldest part of our city, in the avenues and in the 5th Edition area. The tractor unit is unable to fit into this 5-inch diameter mains, therefore the push camera is used to perform the inspections. And these inspections are needed in order to assess the condition of the pipelines and repair defects. And maintenance staffs are using the CCTV equipment to proactively perform pipeline inspections, which has substantially benefited the city in reducing the sanitary sewer overflows as defects are mitigated once they're identified. Last year, the city had 2 SSOs, which is below the maximum limit of 6 SSOs by the San Francisco Baykeeper consent decree. Currently, one of the 2 push cameras is approaching the end of its useful life and is proposed to be replaced. According to staff, the older push camera unit is approximately 12 years old, and the other is about 6 years old. Staff is proposing to replace the older unit and use the new unit as the primary and keep the other as a backup. And these push cameras are operated by staff by inserting the camera that's attached to the cable reel into the pipe and manually pushing the camera until staff is able to see the defect and determine the location. The new push camera has the latest technology that allows the camera to pan and tilt, which provides staff the capability to better see inside the pipe if there are any obstructions. And in addition, these new cameras has the ability to store recorded video in the same databases as the larger CCTV camera, whereas the existing camera does not. In order to purchase the most cost-effective unit, staff work with the government purchasing cooperative, the HGAC, Houston Galveston Area Council, which other cities across the country participate in, such as Daly City, South San Francisco, Foster City, and San Mateo, to obtain a quote for the camera. And the total cost is about $27,000, which includes all the sales tax and delivery fees, and it's within the allocated budget of $30,000. So staff is recommending the council to approve the purchase of this camera. And this concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments for staff? Marty.
How are we doing with videoing our sewer mains, and how are we doing with repairs that we are required to do? I'm not expecting you to have that answer, but if you have it, that's great, but at some point to kind of, when would the council be receiving a report on how well we're doing with making all the repairs and how that's working along?
Sure, we could provide that at a later council date because I don't have that information with me at this moment.
And we've had only 2 SSOs, and we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Knock on wood.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? No. Anybody want to introduce the resolution?
I would like to introduce a resolution.
Vicki?
Councilmember, Vice Mayor Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Yes.
Councilmember Salazar.
Yes.
Mayor Medina.
Aye. Next item, please, Vicki.
Item G, waive first reading and introduce an ordinance adding Chapter 11.38 to Title 11, Buildings, Construction, and Fire Protection of the San Bruno Municipal Code, establishing an expedited and streamlined permitting process for electric vehicle charging stations.
David, please.
Mr. Mayor and council members, this evening our Chief Building Official, Bruno, is with me on this item. He will be the individual more centrally involved with its implementation and did considerable work on the ordinance and prepared a good part of the staff report. I'm going to give the presentation, and Roy and I are both here to answer any questions you may have. In 2015, Assembly Bill 1236 was adopted by the state of California, which requires jurisdictions with a population of less than 200,000 residents to adopt an ordinance to establish expedited and streamlined permitting procedures for electrical vehicle charging stations, EVCS, by September 30th of 2017. The purpose of this item is to consider adoption of an ordinance amending Title 11 of the San Bruno Municipal Code, Buildings, Construction, and Fire Protection, to establish an expedited and streamlined permitting procedure for EVCS in compliance with Assembly Bill 1236. This ordinance must include the requirement that the city will adopt a checklist of requirements for EVCS applications to be eligible for expedited review. AB 1236 preempted local requirements that had not been updated to provide streamlining, and penalties are not assessed for late adoption by cities. The purpose of AB 1236 is to promote the use of electrical vehicle charging stations by removing barriers to homeowners and businesses installing EVCS. An EVCS is defined as any level of electric vehicle supply equipment station which delivers electricity from a source outside an electric vehicle into a plug-in electrical vehicle. In the past 3 years, the Community Development Department has reviewed and approved approximately 13 building permits for single-family and multifamily EVCS using an expedited review process. The Building Division has already implemented a streamlined permit review and approval process for EVCS, including deployment of the state-prescribed guidelines for single EVCS installed within a garage of a single-family dwelling, which is conducted over the counter or within 24 hours of submittal. Larger projects with multiple charging stations, including multifamily or commercial occupancies that are more complex and require further review for conformance with disability accessibility standards and a more thorough evaluation of the existing electrical power system, are typically completed within 10 working days. I should point out that AB 1236 is intended to address the smaller, less complex electrical vehicle charging stations. The proposed ordinance attached to your staff report on this item requires the Community Development Department to create a checklist that will help expedite the review process for single charging stations installed in single-family dwellings and multiple charging stations installed on multifamily or commercial properties. The checklist must contain objective requirements for the installation of an EVCS and a process for electronic submittal of permit applications. The checklist outlines documentation the applicant must provide with the application to qualify for expedited review, including but not limited to the following: existing electrical service rating in amps, system voltage, connected or calculated load, spare capacity in amps, electric vehicle supply equipment, voltage, amperage reading, circuit rating, location, if ventilation is or is not required, and clearances of the charging equipment to comply with all applicable building and fire safety laws. The checklist also helps the applicant to determine whether the location of the electric vehicle supply equipment will comply with any vehicle clearance requirements in the city's zoning ordinance. We've attached a copy of a checklist that we're working on to your packet. It's attachment number 2. In accordance with the intent of AB 1236 to provide an expedited, streamlined permitting process for EVCS, the following process is to have been implemented. Improve expedited permit process in accordance with the AB 1236 guidelines, create a checklist for expedited plan review, post the checklist requirements online, reduce field inspections to 1 inspection, provide ongoing training of permitting staff in the use of the checklist to expedite reviews of Tier 2 EVCS for single-family dwellings. Staff is taking the measures to meet all of these requirements of AB 1236. We have the draft checklist, which is attached to your report. As stated below under the fiscal impact section of the staff report, the number of EVCS permit applications has been small in number, 13 as I mentioned. It is anticipated that staff will be able to develop procedures to satisfy the state requirements. However, staff will monitor activity for possible future adjustments. The ordinance attached to your staff report is intended to satisfy all the requirements of AB 1236. The fiscal impact to the city at this time is minimal based on the small number of EVCS permit applications processed to date. However, it is anticipated that with the increase in electric vehicles available to the marketplace, there will be a progressive increase of over-the-counter plan review services required to accommodate the state mandate. It is recommended, staff is recommending, that a reevaluation of the fiscal impact be conducted within the next fiscal year to analyze total costs associated with implementing the mandate, including permitting processing time expended by staff, electronic submittal requirements, electronic signatures, and the possible future need for staff. We're not anticipating needing additional staff at this time. With that, our staff is recommending to the City Council this evening that you waive first reading and introduce an ordinance adding Chapter 11.38 to Title 11, Buildings, Construction, and Fire Protection of the San Bruno Municipal Code, establishing an expedited and streamlined permitting process for electric vehicle charging stations in compliance with AB 1236. That concludes my staff report. Both Roy and I are available to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
Chair?
Mr. Salazar, Michael.
David, can you elaborate a little bit on the city's ability to take these applications online? Because it sounds like that is part of the requirement. Are we doing any kind of online applications right now for permits?
We can do online applications at this time. We have the capability, for example, for an applicant in a case like this to submit electronically by way of email an application. We can review and process that application. So yes, we have that ability. We intend, though, to develop that further, and perhaps I can ask Roy to talk a little bit about that in terms of what we're hoping to do as we move forward with this. He and I talked about this earlier today and in the recent past as well. Roy?
Yes, thank you, and congratulations, everybody new. Yeah, you were kind enough to approve us an update to our Trackit system, which included 2 modules. One module is the eTrackit module, which opens up the capability for us to actually have people apply for permits and be issued permits online direct. That includes a banking module so they can pay for it online. We've not completed the implementation of that or the deployment of that. We anticipate probably by second or third quarter of this year to bring that forward and have that capability. Like I said, and that will include minor non-plan check items. And will also include the EVCS and also include simple solar voltaic installations too, which was another ordinance that you all had approved that was a state mandated item in 2016.
Okay, thank you. And any concerns with the state mandate? It sounds like we're meeting it, but I know that we don't always agree with the state in terms of what they're insisting on. So, not that we can do much about it, but if we had to implement this differently, would we do anything differently?
I don't think so. I think they're starting to get it right. I know
Excellent.
sometimes they create some things that create problems for cities, like the Water Conserving Act, that for the fixtures that went at its face looked like anytime you changed a switch anywhere or did any kind of work on your home, you had to replace all of your fixtures to meet today's water conserving things, which of course we all vetted that out and it works. So I think they're getting wiser. There probably will be another one coming in a year or two that'll include the electric storage, energy storage systems, which is the Powerwall 2. That'll probably also be included in that movement to expedite those processes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Laura?
Just curious, is the document that they can submit online something they've got to print, fill out, scan it, email it back, or is it a writable PDF that you can actually fill in the fields and submit it?
So at this time, the idea would be to put the checklist online on our website, and to the extent we can work with our IT department, ideally it would be one that could fill in. If not, at least we would be providing the document online, so at home the applicant could complete the checklist, understand what the requirements are, and walk in the door with a completed checklist, understanding what needs to be done, and contact our staff by phone as necessary to get more information. So literally for the smaller applications, we could provide over-the-counter permitting, and that's the objective. I think Roy and the building division staff have done a good job at already doing that in many cases with the smaller requests.
Thank you. Good.
Other questions? Marty? Do you have any? Irene? Okay, does anybody want to make a motion to waive the first reading?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Anybody want to introduce the ordinance?
I'll introduce the ordinance.
Vicki?
I'm sorry.
Councilmember Salazar.
Yes.
Yeah. we made a motion to waive the
and then
reading,
you're not slow.
and I introduced the ordinance.
Councilmember Salazar,
Yes.
Councilmember Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Medina.
Aye. All right, we already had our reports of committee, commissions, and boards. Are there any comments from council members? Marty?
Yes. First, I now have an opportunity to congratulate Vice Mayor Davis and Councilman Michael Salazar. I'm looking forward to working with you. I realize we have a lot of things that we all want to do, and I also understand from our mayor that there will be a goal-setting visioning meeting. But I think I have to say this. We have to get fiber going. We're losing customers. AT&T is aggressively entering our city. I know we just had the subcommittee assigned today, but I think we need to really push that and start figuring out how we're going to pay for it. I understand that the city manager was working on a financial analyst to provide some information for us, but I think we have to really get that priority and start meeting and talking about it. So that's, if I need to make a motion to agendize that, or finding out how the plans are coming along for a rollout, but we need to talk about it. And the longer we wait, the harder it's going to get to. I mean, I think AT&T has like 2-year agreements, and people are not going to want to leave. You know, they're set. They're going to have to pay a penalty to leave. So I would like to agendize a study session on fiber and to start that process.
I would think what we can do is, was there at the end of the month potentially, Connie, some analysis?
So we've previously reported to the City Council that we've contacted with an expert in the field of cable and fiber who's completing a financial analysis. My expectation is that information will be available for our review by the early part of, or he'll be submitting a draft late January. Our intent is to bring that forward to the City Council in February.
Chair? How is staff doing on the rollout? There's two different things. How it's going to be paid for and the cost, and then, or the paying for it, and then where is staff with how is it going to be rolled out? I think they're two different things.
So, well, let me be clear. The financial analysis is not is about the viability of revenues increasing sufficiently to cover the cost of the deployment, and you know, how that might roll out over time. It's not at this point necessarily a plan for the initial capital investment that will be required for deployment of fiber. Regarding the staff's work effort to roll out fiber, we're currently actively in the process of building the fiber to the home at the Peninsula Place condominium complex, and we'll be moving quickly thereafter to the Crystal Springs Terrace complex. Staff is in the process as well of developing a general conceptual plan for a future deployment citywide, should the City Council determine that that is a prudent and desirable next step.
You do know I was just asking Councilmember Salazar, and he's been talking to Director Furpo to get caught up to speed, since he's been appointed to that with his technical and IT background that he does for the county. You talk the same language, so that's why I wanted you to go that. And when we start to have some type of a timeline, I think that's, correct me, I think that's what Marty's just wanting to see is, what are the expectations of a timeline? I think that's what you're asking for, to kind of see.
That's correct. I think it's probably one of the highest priorities, in my opinion, of what is needed, and sharing that with our community to give them hope that we're really going to, I mean, where are we?
And I can appreciate that it's your priority, but as even I said in the State of the City, it's it's going to be a collective, collaborative relationship, and we're going to move forward with setting those priorities. But I do know your passion. That's why I looked at you when I made that statement today during the State of the City. Okay. But okay, thank you, Marty. Other comments? The only thing I wanted to say is thank you to my colleagues tonight. I want to thank Vicki Heshe very much for all your help and support. Obviously, we are doing the meetings a little differently, but thank you. I want to thank staff for their assistance and support, from Bob Bagney to the State of the City to the work and all the efforts that you did. And Connie, thank you for getting it together with Jennifer, so I appreciate that very much. We don't have a closed session, and we will be adjourning to the next regular City Council meeting that will be held right here, January 23rd at 7 p.m. Meeting adjourned.